Meeting session at 1:57 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we have a recommendation here that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the Planning and Development Introduction presentation. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Penny, seconded by Lisa. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sure. Kathy, if we pop that table up for him, can you guys get in and out there? He's with the media and would like a table. Right. You're gonna want some pictures for the presentation.
Yes. I don't know how we're gonna pull that off today, but
How are you? Good. See you.
Yes, sir.
I brought pens.
He's a lot of
great. Really abandoned this slide.
Jeff, I see that you're in the waiting room as an attendee, and at the appropriate time in the meeting, I'll move you in. We have some presentations before we get to our public meetings.
there we end, but I think we'll try to get started here again. So welcome everybody to our council meeting. We've got a couple of presentations up next and then a couple of public meetings under the Planning Act. I suspect a number of you are interested in some of the deputations and perhaps some of the things that come after that, but we have a few steps to go through before we get to that. So we'll start with the presentation we have from the Grand River Conservation Authority. I think we have Samantha Lawson, who's the CAO, and Sonia. I'll just call her Sonia for now because I'm struggling with the pronunciation. Sorry about that. To do their 2023 budget presentation. So welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting us present our draft budget today. So again, my name is Samantha Lawson, and it's Sonia Radoja, who is the Manager of Corporate Services. And we're going to present two parts to this presentation. The first part is just a brief background on the GRCA and what we do, and then Sonia will get into the detailed financials. So I don't know if the presentation is loaded. Or if we're sharing the presentation.
Sorry, I've got the presentation loaded, and if you can just let me know as you want me to move the slides forward.
Perfect.
Just a second.
So some of the presentation today is a bit more detailed than we normally do, just because we know that it's a new council. And so just to give a little bit more background in terms of the programs and services that we provide. So you'll have some context when Sonia gets into the draft budget itself. So next slide, please. So the Grand River watershed is one of the largest in Southern Ontario. The river and its tributaries lie at the heart of one of the richest and fastest growing regions in our province. We know that the future prosperity of the watershed, its municipalities, and the communities are linked to the health of the river, its tributaries, and the natural environment. Next slide, please. So the Grand River Conservation Authority operates a range of programs in engineering, planning, land management, recreation, and education. Our strategic mandate is to develop and implement watershed-based programs that protect people and property from flooding and erosion, improve the health of the watershed, connect people to the environment, and manage our land holdings in a responsible and sustainable manner. Our programs balance human, environmental, and economic needs so that we can deliver on our vision of a healthy watershed for now and for future generations. We build relationships and trust with our watershed partners to achieve our common goals. Next slide, please. Warmer air and water temperatures, bigger rainstorms, and longer periods of droughts are all consequences of climate change. This poses new challenges in managing floods, improving water quality, and securing water supplies for municipalities, farmers, industry, and the natural environment. The GRCA owns and maintains 27 dams throughout our watershed. 7 of these dams are large multi-purpose dams and reservoirs, which are actively used year-round to manage river flows. These multi-purpose dams were built to work as a system to address frequent and severe flooding, extremely low summer river flows, and challenges with water quality. Sometimes these goals can compete with one another, and we must manage them in a delicate balance to ensure that there are adequate water supplies for downstream users while reducing the risk to flooding. Next slide, please. The GRCA operates the Grand River Flood Forecasting System, which provides real-time monitoring and forecasting of weather conditions that affect the Grand River watershed. Recent improvements to the system include the implementation of a product called HydroMaster, which provides us with a much higher level of weather forecasting data, as well as more comprehensive data to support decision-making when flooding is imminent or occurring. Work is being done to update the regulatory floodplain mapping in the upper portion of the Conestoga River watershed, which will be completed by the end of 2023. As a result of this, reach-based mapping to support flood emergency preparedness and response will also be developed. Next slide, please. Through a memorandum of understanding with Wellington County, the GRCA provides technical advice to the township on Planning Act applications and other planning documents, including input from biologists, water resource engineers, and resource planners. Next slide, please. The primary objective of Source Protection Program is to protect the current and future drinking water sources from contamination and depletion. There is ongoing work to update the Source Protection Plan where new information becomes available. So some of that new information might be new infrastructure such as new wells, update to technical analysis based on revised technical rules, update to policies to help improve implementation. For the Wellington County chapter, the Grand River Source Protection Plan was updated as a part of a recent amendment that came into effect last year around this time. So just to note that this update was for Wellington County, more specifically for Centre Wellington and Mapleton, but we continue to work together with the county to support Wellington's Source Water Protection Plan and for its implementation. Next slide, please. The GRCA delivers a voluntary rural water quality program on behalf of 6 upper tier municipalities in the watershed to help farmers implement best practices to improve and protect surface and groundwater quality. Each program is locally developed with input from the farming community, and variation in grant rates and eligible projects are tailored to reflect local priorities and budgets. Since 1998, more than 7,000 projects have been completed, with 22 million in grants and more than 62 million invested by municipalities and landowners. Next slide, please. In the township in 2022, 6 projects were completed with 10,000 in grants provided by Wellington County. These projects included cover crops, well upgrades, and tree planting. In the last 25 years in the township of Wellington North, nearly 1.1 million has been provided in grants to 411 projects worth more than $2.9 million when combined with landowner contributions. Next slide, please. We know that spending time in nature has a positive effect on people's physical and mental health. At the GRCA, we connect people with the natural environment by providing environmental education programs and access to outdoor spaces. A vital part of the watershed's recreational infrastructure, our conservation areas host over 2 million visitors a year and are an important part of the local economy, paying property taxes, hiring local staff, and supporting a vibrant tourism industry in our communities. Next slide, please. The GRCA owns approximately 48,000 acres of recreational and natural land, and this includes 11 active fee-for-use conservation areas such as Luther Marsh Wildlife Management Area, 5 nature centers, as well as cottage lot programs, farm leases, and properties that we use for passive recreation and rail trails. Some key initiatives that are underway to meet the new regulations are a conservation area strategy that is being developed, which will establish objectives that will inform GRCA's decision-making related to the land it owns and controls, including decisions related to policies governing the acquisition and disposition of land. Land categories will also be developed on the type of activities that can take place on the lands and how these lands are augmented in terms of natural heritage or integrated with municipal owned lands as well. A land inventory is also underway, which will be completed probably more towards the end of 2024, and will include the new requirements identified under Bill 23 to identify lands that the Conservation Authority owns that could support housing development. So the next step of the presentation, I'm just going to pass over to Sonia Radoja, and she's going to get into the financial information for you.
Thank you. I'm going to request that I keep maybe my video off. We are having some power issues at the authority today, and I don't want to drop off the call, so I'll do what I can to conserve some power here. In terms of our 2023 budget, the challenges that we were facing is really to manage the current economic inflationary pressures that we're experiencing, to incorporate staff restructuring given some staff retirements that occurred in 2022, and getting things in line with the new regulations that will come into effect in the following year, but reorganizing our corporate structure somewhat to facilitate that change. And to manage increases in our conservation areas that are experiencing significant demand. Our revenue in 2022 surpassed $11 million compared to 9.5 previously. So there's a lot of demand for our parks. And we are looking to develop a sustainable business model for our environmental outdoor education program, given the way they will be categorized under the new regulations. And namely, they're what's going to be called a Category 3, which requires it to be a self-sustainable program. Next slide, please. In terms of the major assumptions, we make assumptions about compensation and benefit increases overall. And we had staffing increases that we put in of 3 FTEs, and we also incorporated additional staffing in our parks. And we also have to address the fact that our students, which is over 200 of them, we can now opt into OMERS starting in 2023, and we have to estimate a cost for that. I will highlight that in terms of the staffing increase, a couple of the positions we are not actually having to affect your bottom line. We are using our reserves to fund them. One of the positions is temporary needs as relates to new regulations, and one of the positions is an engineering role that we will have to, over time, incorporate into levy costs. We've tried to hold our property taxes constant, and that's because just of our estimates have always had a little bit extra built in, but so we can feel the budget can still remain constant. We are experiencing extreme high demand, extreme high cost increases as relates to insurance. So we had to build in a significant amount for that. We're trying to hold our administrative costs constant. We do have increasing information technology expenses, but we do notice a trend since COVID that travel and communications and some office type other administrative expenses have declined that should be offsetting for the IT costs. We've held our other operating expenses constant as well. We've increased, of course, our park activity costs because we're increasing our revenue assumptions. And there were certain items in the budget that were just one time, and we just removed them for this year. And those were taking out 400,000. The overall impact being that our operating expenses are increasing about 1.2 million or 4.5%. Next slide, please. So this gives you a breakdown of how we like to look at our budget and can often help explain fluctuations between the 2 years. Right now, though, they are coming out total about 35 million, both in budgeted last year and this year. But you can see if you look at the various categories, as I just walked you through, the 1.2 million increase to operating is in the January draft, offset by the fact that there is less capital spending and less special project spending in the 2023 budget. Next slide, please. So our operating program is made up of managing a watershed management, such as our dams and the flood forecasting, resource planning, permits, and land management. Our conservation area represents over almost half of our self-generated revenue. And environmental education and corporate services and communication are the summary of the activities we carry out. Next slide, please. In terms of our capital budget of about 4.5 million, it relates to our water control structures, our conservation areas, equipment, and motor pool capital. Next slide. And more specifically, our water management capital, we've got about a $1.5 million budget set aside, and conservation areas is about 2 million. And that's where the decline came. Our water management capital last year was about 2 million. What we are able to do, though, is if our capital budgets, the water management budgets exceeds at 1.5 million in any given year, we do have a reserve that we can draw on to fund any increased costs so that it doesn't have an effect on the levy that we request from our municipalities. And similarly with conservation areas, they fund their capital costs out of their self-generated revenue, and they also have a fund in which they can draw upon if the demands were high. Next slide, please. And we have what we like to call special projects, because these can really vary from year to year, and they do not rely on applying any of our general municipal levy to these types of activities. The major one being our source protection program that the government continues to commit to funding 100% of the costs. We have a rural water quality grant program, and that has special municipal funding for it. And then we have a number of small projects ongoing here, all of which have what we refer to as external funding. Next slide, please. So in terms of what our revenue composition looks like, you can see that the municipal levy makes up just over 1/3 of the overall funding to run our operations. That self-generated, though, is almost half of our funding, and that our government grants are quite low, and other municipal funding is really related to, the biggest chunk there is that rural water quality program, where municipalities give us grants that we pass on to landowners in order to carry out projects on their properties to improve water quality. Next slide, please. And bottom line is that our levy ask for overall for the corporation is almost 13 million for 2023. And that represents a 3.5% increase over the prior year, or about $438,000 additional. And North Wellington, after we allocate our levy based on prorating it using market value, modified market value assessment, Wellington North levy ask is going to be 3.3% higher. So slightly below the overall increase to GRCA, and will go from about 55,000 to 57,000 year over year. Next slide, please. And one slide we'd like to share with people to give a bit of context is what the levy that we ask for translates into per capita in the Grand River watershed. And it translates to about $11.47 per capita. Next slide. That brings us to the end of our presentation, and can entertain questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia and Samantha. Any questions from council for them?
I've got
Councilor McCabe.
Thank you, and thanks, Sonia and Samantha. It's nice to see the high demand for the parks, and that's increased the revenue, which is good. And you had a slide there connecting people with the environment, which is fantastic, and probably well used over the last couple of years during the pandemic. But I've always got to go back to what goes on here in Wellington North, and it's not a lot, I don't think, when it comes to the Grand River Conservation Authority. I don't know if it was last year or the year before we had this presentation, and I had asked what the plans were for Damascus Dam and the trails in and around there. And I haven't heard anything with regards to that since then. And, there's trails that are closed to our residents. I know there's an increase of about $2,000 to 57,000 this year. And I know the provincial grants aren't going up anytime soon. I know SVCA, the board that I sit on, hasn't gotten any increase for probably over almost 25 years. But I guess goes back to my question is, in our area, like, what do you do for us up here? And when are we going to get the Damascus Dam opened up again?
So I'm
Because,
assuming
like you had said, there's an increase in demand for the parks. And I know the residents in my area and Ward 4 especially, which is where the Damascus Dam is, have been begging for it to open since I was in high school. And that's a long time ago.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can certainly answer those questions. So in terms of the GRCA, we actually don't use any municipal levy towards the maintenance of our passive recreation or our parks for that matter. So we actually don't charge anything to the municipality for those areas. But if the municipality is interested in looking at ways in which we can work together to revisit opening that park, we're certainly more than willing to do that. There was the inquiry that was done quite a few years ago, which resulted in the reason why the property was closed in the first place. And I think the main challenge around that was probably back when there weren't cell phones or there weren't municipal phones. Basically what it was after the boy had drowned, there was a problem with people contacting local services to assist with the rescue. So basically we were told to close the park until such time that we could address communications with EMS properly. So if the municipality is interested in terms of looking at reopening that, we'd be happy to sit down and discuss with you about that. That being said, we'd have to also talk about the upkeep and the maintenance, because currently we don't have the staff to support opening that property.
Can I go on?
Go ahead, Councillor McCabe.
Thanks for that, Samantha. And yeah, there was a phone there for years, and you know, walking back there last summer, excuse me, in the fall, like all the buildings, everything is just derelict right now. So I mean, the should have been upkept throughout those that number of years. And again, that's probably over. Oh yeah, well, actually about 31 years ago since it's closed. And I know there's been parks all along this GRCA that have new parks that have opened while this one remains shuttered. And I mean, it's a jewel for this area. The catchment area within North Wellington County would be fantastic, and even maybe in the lower Southern Grey. So yeah, of course, I would be interested in hearing that conversation. And then if I can go on, one of the next questions I have is with the Ontario Federation of Snowmobiling Clubs, and just wondering where we are with that piece that runs through Wellington North. I think it's District 9, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So through you, Mr. Mayor, District 9 contacted us in, I think, sort of the late fall, mentioning that they had obtained funding to hire a lawyer. So probably once the season is done, we'll be revisiting opportunities with them to potentially look at what an agreement would be. That being said, we do have meetings with some of the other municipalities as well. And if Wellington North is interested too, we can include you in some of those conversations to look at how we can facilitate snowmobile use through the township.
Yeah, and I think with Lisa, sorry, through you, Mayor, I think with Lisa Hearn, our councillor, being on GRCA now, I think that's going to prove positive for us here as well.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Any other questions from council? Comments? Councillor Hearn?
I might as well comment since I'm the new rep, but I've only had one meeting and it's been a lot of learning about the processes. And I agree, Steve, and that's one of the things that I'll try to follow up on. I had a question, and maybe I could ask this in a GRCA meeting, and I'm still getting up to speed. The water festivals, like I agree with Councillor McCabe, a lot of the stuff seems to be centralized to the south of us. 51% of Wellington North is in the GRCA watershed. Brant County, I've heard a lot of great things about the water festivals and the kids really enjoying those. And I'm wondering why that couldn't be available up here for the kids in our northern areas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So certainly we can. The county actually provides us with funding to host those water festivals. So again, we can meet with staff to talk about the opportunities and the costs that are associated with that. And that's probably as much detail as I can go into right now.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council at this point? Okay, not seeing anything further. So again, thank you, Samantha and Sonia, for your presentation today. It appears that GRCA, like every other organization, is struggling with some of the effects of inflation, and looks like you're trying to rein in some of that. So thank you for your efforts in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have another presentation this afternoon, and that's from Wellington Crime Stoppers. We have Sarah Bowers-Peters here, Program Coordinator, to give us an update. Welcome, Sarah.
Good. All right. Thank you very much for having me today, Mayor, councilors, staff, guests. Always happy to come and visit our friends at the Township of Wellington North. The reason for the update is it's been several years since we've been here, and I thought it would be a good opportunity, again, with a new council to get everyone up to date on what we're doing and maybe answer some questions there may be about the program. So if you want to just jump right into that presentation, Karen, that'd be great. So as the program coordinator for Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington, this is a large part of what I do is community engagement, increase awareness about the program, and look for new opportunities for partnership and hopefully reduce and resolve crime. Okay. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with our program, we've been in the community since 1988. 2023 marks 35 years of service in Guelph and Wellington. And a reminder that Crime Stoppers is not the police. It's a separate organization that's run by community volunteers who donate their time on our board of directors. I am an OPP civilian employee assigned to Crime Stoppers. Our overhead is extremely low. We make sure that all funds raised to pay tipster rewards come from fundraising, donations, etc. When you provide a tip to Crime Stoppers, you are anonymous. The information that you provide is confidential. It's an alternative to reporting directly to police, because we know not everyone wants to go through the court process or maybe doesn't have the relationship with our police partners that we do necessarily. So although Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington has a great relationship with our police partners, we know that there may be other options out there or other realities out there rather for members of the public. So if you provide a tip, a cash reward is presented if your information leads to an arrest. And as I mentioned, we rely on fundraising, donations from individuals, businesses, organizations to pay these rewards, as well as to operate the program. You know, simple things like the pens that we hand out, the posters and things like that. Need to emphasize we do not use tax dollars for this, because that's a common misconception that people think that we're using taxpayer funds to go to tipster rewards. That is not the case. Okay. We can't speak to the specific incidents that are resolved as a result of Crime Stoppers information, so we do refer to our statistics. So since our incorporation in 1988, we've hit over 23,000 tips to our program. That's resulted in over 1,500 arrests that would not have taken place otherwise, clearing over 2,300 cases through our investigative partners, who have then laid over 4,500 charges. Property recovered is over 10 million in that time. Narcotics is over 27 million for a total of 38 million and change. During this time, the board of directors has approved rewards in excess of $183,000. And just last year, that total was 4,700 plus. So we are active. More than half of our rewards get picked up on an annual basis. So we know we're constantly having to ensure that we have money in the bank. So when you're seeing all the fundraising that we're doing, especially in Wellington North, this is why we have to run the program. We have to make sure we have funds to pay the tipster rewards. Okay. Which segues nicely into our fundraising. You can see on the left, that is our board president, Derek West from Mount Forest. And he is with members of the 100 Women Who Care Rural Wellington. They contributed funds to our organization for an event I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. And then on the right-hand side, of course, is the Mount Forest shredding event that's held at the Wellington North Fire Service parking lot in Mount Forest, which is a huge success. We have people who reach out to us throughout the year asking when the shredding event is coming back. So we have tremendous support from people, not just in Mount Forest, throughout Wellington North, and we're very appreciative of the support. And of course, most recently with the flag raising that we had in honor of Crime Stoppers Month, and those who came out and enjoyed a rather brisk morning. So thank you for doing that. Okay, go ahead, Karen. So the funds that we received from 100 Women Who Care, as well as partnering funds, matching funds from 100 Men Who Give a Damn Guelph, went towards an initiative that we launched late last year, which is called 5 Tips, 5 Ideas, and 5 Signs. And as you can see on the screen, this is breaking down information for parents. We give really tangible, simple directions on what parents can do, you know, how to talk to your kids about cyber safety and human trafficking, how to keep your kids cyber safe and human trafficking aware, and 5 signs on that your child is being groomed. We know that kids are being educated about these topics in school, which is tremendous. It's a huge improvement from a couple of years ago. But now we're seeing a disconnect with the parents. The parents don't think this is happening, or that their child would never be involved with this. So what we're trying to do is let them know that this has nothing to do with the caliber of individual their child is. This is where predators go to look for kids. They're going online, and human trafficking is a very real thing. And we know it's happening to young people in our communities, including the Township of Wellington North. Okay. So if there's ever an opportunity to present, we would welcome that. The funds went to a comprehensive radio and video campaign. You can see our videos on our YouTube channel. I would encourage you to check them out. We partner with Wellington County OPP as well as Guelph Police Service on these topics, with investigators giving some information as far as the latest trends that they are seeing. Again, we're trying to push that information out to parents and let them know that we are a resource for them to understand this crime that's happening. The youth are already aware of online grooming, and just making sure that the parents are up to speed along with the children. Okay. We're going to be launching later this month a new initiative called Hate the Crime in Wellington County. And this is the first half of a two-part initiative. We receive funding from the Ministry of the Solicitor General to address hate crime as well as fraud in the area. And we are partnering with Wellington County OPP and Victim Services Wellington for these initiatives. So there'll be more information about that very shortly. Okay, Karen? The next is fraud talk. And again, I think we all know there's been a lot of information, even locally, about fraud happening within our communities and how it's targeting everyone, not just our seniors. We need to be having more conversations around this crime. And we're going to be tackling that and launching an initiative next month. The full complement of work that we're doing, we have Crime Stoppers 101 explaining how Crime Stoppers works, how to provide a tip. We have Seniors Crime Stoppers specifically addressed to our senior population, as well as our student Crime Stoppers, same. Our human trafficking awareness is something that we've been pushing since 2017, since we became aware of the crime, and saying that we would make it parallel messaging along with Crime Stoppers. We would also talk about human trafficking because we know it's happening in rural communities as well. So within our human trafficking awareness, we have EPAC, Educate Parents and Children Together. We have a human trafficking community presentation, as well as a human trafficking youth, using age-appropriate terminology for that. Okay. Most recently, you would be familiar with the human trafficking in Wellington County and sexual assault in Wellington County campaign. We had a highly problematic sign just south of Mount Forest. It was taken out by very high winds with that hurricane that went through. I think it was early 2022 or late 2021. We also then had to relocate the sign because the corn crop got so high we couldn't actually see the sign. Rural Ontario problems, right? So that sign has had a couple of locations basically on the same stretch of Highway 6 on the east side of the highway. We've had feedback on the sign. It's obviously supposed to be eye-catching. We want people to take notice of it. But again, that was a grant through the Ministry of the Solicitor General. I would strongly encourage, if you have the opportunity, to check out the videos we have on our YouTube channel with the HT and WC and SA and WC messaging. Again, it was to localize and make residents in rural areas aware that human trafficking and sexual assault are happening here, and how they can deal with it if they are aware of it happening, either as a victim, to get supports to victim services, to report it to police, or to report it to Crime Stoppers. Okay. Wanted to let you know that we've received a number of awards. Each year we put in for provincial and international awards. We had a really good year in 2022. I won't go through all of that, but you can see there a total, I believe it's 12 awards total we won. The reason we want to talk about the awards we received, which are primarily media and programming based, is because we want the community to know that the work we're doing is being recognized at these levels, and they have a sense of confidence in using our program. So we feel very strongly that the community needs to know about this. We want our municipalities to know about this. We're very proud of these, and especially this year with the international awards, the productivity, having the total seizures, the total property recovered, and of course the total arrests. That's really the outcome. That's the ultimate that we can hope for. Thank you. And I know usually I'm supposed to take questions from council, but I actually have a couple of questions for council. First of all, is there any way the municipality can help increase awareness of Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington? And I'm not looking for an answer on the spot. It's something I want to leave with you. If there's any possibility for a partnership or messaging that we can be working together on, is there a local volunteer that you feel would be a good fit for our Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington Board of Directors? As we have a volunteer board, it changes over time. There's people who come and go, but if you know of someone that you think would like to be involved in volunteering, we would love to hear from them. It is a working board, so it is very similar to the work you're doing on council. We do have multiple meetings and we have expectations of outcomes. So if someone's looking to really get involved and make a tangible difference in their community, we're an organization to send them to. Oh, that's okay. I know you want me to wrap this up. It's okay. I'm trying to go fast. Is there a presentation of those that I've mentioned that what you feel would be of benefit to staff that we could present? Would be happy to do that. Is there a partnership that we could develop between the municipality and Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington? Something that you see, it's like, well, here's something that we're doing that we could be tying Crime Stoppers in with. We can absolutely do that. Is there an area that you feel that we could assist you within the municipality? And I know, shocking, someone coming to you asking how we can help you, but that's what we would like to see happen. If there's a way that we can assist in the community, keeping it safer, looking to reduce crime, keeping our residents safe, that's what we would like to do. And the big question at the end is if you are following us on social media. We have a very active presence on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and would encourage you to follow us if you are not already. And that goes for all y'all too. I know you're here for something else. I appreciate the great turnout here for my presentation though. But if you are interested and you want to get more involved and understand what Crime Stoppers does, we'd be happy to have you follow us. So please consider that. And then go ahead, Karen, if you have any questions. There you go. We were so excited to get back to the Mount Forest Santa Claus parade. So I want to throw that in at the end. But yes, if there's any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Any questions or comments from council?
Good.
I'm not seeing any, but I would like to thank you and the volunteers of Crime Stoppers, Sarah, for the work that you're doing. I mean, we're very fortunate to live in one of the safest communities in Canada, and appreciate the work that you're doing with your team to play the role that you do in that. You were talking about what kind of things can we cooperate on. And I think you were involved with our newcomer volunteer event this past year. So
Yes.
I certainly see a good fit with that continuing,
Absolutely.
both for recruiting volunteers for your organization, as well as informing newcomers about,
So,
and our existing residents about what they can do to help keep our community safe. Everybody can play a role. This is an avenue to do that. So
for sure.
thank you very much.
Thank you. And if before I take my leave, is it possible, just with our 35th anniversary, I did bring one of the Crime Stoppers flag. It's much warmer inside. If I could do a photo with council and just have that for our social media, is that possible?
Sure.
2 seconds?
Yeah, we have a couple of counselors not here, but
That's okay. They don't get their pens then. They just keep it. Oh, where you want to do this? Okay. It's not compressed.
It's not as, it's not as.
You can see everything there. You do one sideways. Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Awesome.
okay. So that finishes up our presentations for today. We'll now move on to, we've got some public meetings to deal with under the Planning Act, so we need to recess our council meeting to proceed to those. So I have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North recess the February 6th, 2023 regular meeting of council for the purpose of holding a public meeting under the Planning Act. This is for Cobblestones Diversions Inc., minor variance, Corden Canada Limited, minor variance, and Township Wellington North zoning bylaw amendment. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Steve. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're recessed from our council meeting. And we will switch over to Committee of Adjustment meeting. Excuse me. So I'll call our Committee of Adjustment meeting to order and ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest with regard to anything on today's agenda. This is application A23 and A24/22. I have none to declare. Councillor Burke.
Sorry, no.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rankin. I can't hear you, Penny, but I can see you shaking your head, so I'm going to assume that's a no. Thanks. Councillor Hearn.
I do not.
And Councillor McCabe.
None.
Okay, thank you. So we'll deal with the minutes of the previous Committee of Adjustment meeting from December 5th. And we have a recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes of December 5th, 2022, application A22/22 be adopted as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to our first application. This is application A23/22 for Cobblestone Diversions Inc. The location of the subject property is described as Mount Forest Survey, Wiley's Lot 6, Part Lot 5, description including registered plan 61R5862, Part 2, and is municipally known as 405 Durham Street West. The property is approximately 1,240 square meters in size. Location of the property is shown on the map attached. Purpose and effect of the application is to provide relief from the minimum rear yard setback and permit a permanent parking space to be located in front of the wall of the dwelling for an existing residence on a retained parcel. This minor variance is a condition of severance application B113-22, B114-22, and B115-22 that was granted provisional approval by the Wellington County Land Division Committee. Other variances may be considered where deemed appropriate. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 60 meters of the subject property, as well as mailed to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on the property on January 13th, 2023.
Thank you. I see Matthew's getting up to the podium to give us his presentation. So
yes, I
welcome,
know the
Matthew.
drill. So yeah, perfect. So good evening or afternoon, I suppose, council as well as members of the public. For you today is a minor variance application to provide relief from the minimum rear yard setback and permit a permanent parking space to be located in front of the front wall of the dwelling. To provide some context, as you mentioned, this application is associated with consent B113, 114, as well as B115, 22. That was approved by the Land Division Committee at the county. So I direct council to figure 2 of my report. The severance application separated the lot municipally known as 405 Durham Street into 3 parcels and did a lot line adjustment with 305 per street to extend the rear yards of the 3 severed parcels. The variance requested would be applicable to the existing dwelling or the middle lot, located in figure 2. The existing dwelling does not have a garage and no other space other than the driveway to park a vehicle given the location of the existing home. It sits approximately 5.6 meters from the rear lot line, whereas 7.6 meters is required. So with that said, planning staff have no concerns with the application as the request is minor, meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and I welcome any questions.
Thanks, Matthew. We have correspondence from Source Protection Coordinator and Environmental Planning Coordinator with Saugeen Conservation Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
No, there has not.
Okay, thank you. Just notification here, any persons wishing to be notified of the decision must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the applicant and or the public. I see Jeff Buseman up here on the screen. Jeff, I assume you're on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, I am, Mayor Lennox. I'm happy to present. I mean, Matt did a great job of presenting. I don't know if it's possible to throw the severance sketch on the screen. If not, I can just talk to it as well. Or figure 2, as Matt talked about in his sketch. And he explained it well. One thing I'd like to highlight is that the rear yard variance for the existing house actually, firstly, I should say, there was a lot line adjustment from 305 Perth Street to add to this parcel so that all these parcels, so we could create these 3 parcels. One nice benefit is that the property line was right along the wall of that existing house. Now, by doing this, we've moved the property line a fair bit north, and therefore now we got rear yard actually for this house. So I think that's a positive thing. Oh, that's great. And so that's where right in the middle where we have the A, all that is extra land now for that house. So that house has space now in the back. I think that's a positive change. The other thing that as mentioned is the variance B in the front is for parking, the fact that it's in front of the house. Normally parking is supposed to be behind the front wall of the house. But in this case, there's lots of room. The house is way set back. So there's 11 meters. It'd be different if the house is only 6 meters from the road as typical in the zoning, but in this case, it's 11 meters back. So those are the 2 variances. And as identified, at the end of the day, we're creating 2 new parcels. You can see the ones on the left and on the right, which will create good sized houses. So I think it's a positive development, and I appreciate the positive feedback we received thus far. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Do any other members of the public who wish to speak to this application? We didn't have anyone registered on Zoom.
No one other than Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. So with seeing no other questions or comments, we'll go to committee. Any questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one question. With the way it's proposed here, are there any concerns with sight lines, being that this lot is on the corner property?
Okay, in terms of traffic.
Yes.
Okay. I see Jeff Buseman has his hand up. So Jeff, I'll let you have a go at that one.
Sure, and maybe Matt can follow up behind me, and that is that quarter lots have this thing called exterior side yard. So the side yard relative to Perth Street has to be quite a bit bigger, has to be 6 meters. That naturally almost puts it so that there won't, so that the house is quite a ways away from the corner, the physical house. So there should not be any sightline issues at all for this property. And also we are designing and proposing the driveway be on the left side. That's probably, as you face it from Durham Street, that's probably the best way to orient this lot so that the driveway stays away from the corner. And so any parked cars won't be in that sight line either.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move to the decision. And it reads as follows: that the minor variance applied for in application A23/22 for the property described as Mount Forest Survey, Wiley's, Lot 6, Part Lot 5, description including registered plan 61R5862, Part 2, with a civic address of 405 Durham Street West, Mount Forest, to provide the following relief. Number 1, that a reduced rear yard setback of 5.6 meters be permitted for an existing residential single detached dwelling, whereas the bylaw requires 7.6 meters. And number 2, that a permanent parking space in front of the front wall of the main building be permitted for an existing residential single detached dwelling, whereas the bylaw requires all parking spaces within a residential zone to be located to the rear of the front wall of the main building. All those in favor? That's approved. Thanks very much. Move on to our next application. This is A24/22 for Corden Canada Limited. Location of the subject property is described as part lot 22 and is municipally known as 250 Main Street South in Mount Forest. The property is approximately 654.39 meters squared in size. The location of the property is shown on the map in your package. Purpose and effect of the application is to provide relief from the minimum width requirements for a proposed driveway. The proposed variance will permit a reduced driveway width of 3 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum width of 6 meters. Additionally, relief is sought to permit one residential unit to be located on the main floor of commercial use, occupying 50% of the ground floor area. Other variances may be considered where deemed appropriate. How was notice given for this public meeting?
This is mailed to property owners within 60 meters of the subject property, as well as mailed to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on the property on January 13th, 2023.
Thank you. Matthew, over to you, please.
Perfect. Thank you. And through you, Chair. Before you today is a minor variance application to provide relief from section 16.3B of the zoning bylaw, which states that an accessory residential use in the C1 zone shall be located above the main commercial use. In addition, the applicant is seeking relief to permit a 3-meter driveway, whereas 6 meters is required. Planning staff do have concerns with the proposed floor plan configuration. In particular, the inclusion of a residential unit in the back portion of the main floor. The intent of the central business district and C1 accessory residential use provision is that a commercial use are to be located at street level, and that the residential use is accessory rather than the primary use. So with that said, planning staff can support the driveway reduction, however, recommend that the residential unit on the main floor be utilized as commercial space. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we have a correspondence from the Environmental Planning Coordinator, Saugeen Conservation Authority. Do we have any other further correspondence received in respect to this application?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Any persons wishing to be notified of the decision must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the applicant and or the public. Do we have anyone registered to speak on this application?
We did. We had Adam Macker. And I'm not sure if that's you as an attendee. If you're in the attendee room, can you just raise your hand? I will move you, I will promote you into the meeting. Okay. You just need to accept the promotion and you'll be in the meeting. You could put your camera on and your microphone. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Councilor and committee members. My name is Alam Makur and I'm here to represent the owners of 250 Main Street. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Okay,
great. Today we have 2 items on the table, as Matthew stated. 1, to reduce the required 6-meter driveway to 3 meters. 2, to allow the construction of residential unit on the back of the ground floor. We learned after we started the process and put many planning and resources into it that residential units are no longer allowed on the ground floor. However, the zoning bylaw did change after we submitted application to various building department personnel. Not allowing this will require us to redesign or replan everything. This also might not be a good outcome for us since we might lose some key stakeholders. I hope you can see this from our point of view and know that we started this project knowing that residential units are allowed on the ground floor of 250 Main Street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak to this application? The public?
Anyone in the audience that wants to speak to it?
Okay, we'll switch over to committee members. Any questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Rankin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering, with the narrower driveway that's going, and how many cars can be parked in that driveway?
We won't be parking any cars in the driveway. We have allocated some parking spots in the backyard. Whatever it takes, if the residential unit is allowed on the ground floor, we will make sure we meet all the zoning bylaws as far as parking goes. So no parking on the driveway.
Okay, did you have anything further on that, Penny, or?
That's what I was wondering, if there was extra residential unit on the bottom, how many parking spaces would be required? And if the driveway was going to be sufficient for that. So
So I think
that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Burke?
Yes,
I'm good now.
thank you, Mayor Lennox. My question is to the developers. You would like to have 3 residential units, and I can appreciate that. Is there consideration to expand the commercial space on the ground floor?
Yeah, absolutely. We can make the commercial one bigger and reduce the size of the residential one, because I think we have to do that. I'm going to look at the zoning bylaw and see how many parking spots are required per unit. So the residential unit could be smaller, or specifically the one on the ground floor could be converted into a 1-bedroom or a bachelor to accommodate for the commercial unit.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Rankin.
What would be the outcome if you were not allowed to have any residential space on the bottom floor?
We have some interest party in development of this lot, and this was not a condition, but was a key interest for them, right? Also, we have to redesign everything from scratch.
Any other questions or comments? So I have a question for planning staff. I mean, well, the recommendation is to approve the parking access to parking space with a narrower driveway, but to deny the residential use on the main floor. If the applicant were to, like, is there value in us deferring this application and asking the applicant to come back with a revised application? Or is this something that we can move ahead and deny this requirements on the main floor? I guess I'm just asking the question in terms of process. If this needs to be revised, the applicant's saying that, you know, they come in with a process prior to us making some changes. Do we need to give them an opportunity to adapt to those changes?
Sure. So through you, Chair, maybe I can expand a bit more on what the applicant's sort of referring to with this prior application. Yeah, no, it's green. So maybe I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was maybe in 2021 or 2022 when they submitted a site plan that we've reviewed a number of times. And originally, prior to that, residential was permitted on 50% of commercial units on the main floor. So unfortunately, I suppose for the applicant's sake, in late 2022, a housekeeping amendment was done where we essentially scrapped that 50% rule, and commercial was then to be only 100% on the ground floor units. So that's sort of where he's referring to. I suppose process-wise, you could go either way, either defer and then, you know, we could work with the applicant to rejig the concept, or, you know, ultimately deny it.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I just have a question just before you make a decision to whether prefer this or not. Based on what Matt said, that's exactly what I was trying to say. I read the agendas and I know you guys approved the reduction of the driveway. And just wanna see where's the community members at as far as their questions and my explanation. Is the answer is still to deny the ground floor residential? If that's the case and there's no ways around it, is it possible for partial approval? For example, if you have to deny the ground floor, you have to deny the ground floor, and I can't change that, but just before we defer it.
So in terms of the recommendation is to permit the driveway, but not permit the residential on the main floor.
Was that final?
Well, no, we haven't taken a vote on it. Committee members haven't weighed in specifically on that. I just wanted to open up the, if there's an opportunity for more collaboration on this, I didn't want to make you start over the application process if that was an opportunity. But certainly I'm willing to take direction from committee members as to what they wish to deal with this. Certainly they would need to, if we were to defer it, they would need to make that a motion as well. So I'll open it up to committee members. Any thoughts or ideas? Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, I'd be all right to opening it up or deferring it, just because he was under the assumption that we could use 50% of that commercial for residential and then change the playing field on him, and kind of got caught up with that. So I'm all right if you guys can work with him and see if there's something more we can do to help him out.
Okay, and just before I see you, Councillor Burke, I'll just get to you in a second here.
Thank you.
In that regard, though, are we interested in talking about residential on the main floor?
I would suggest putting it on if there's, I can't remember if there's a second floor, but I still wouldn't be approving a residential on the main floor, especially in the central business district. So if we could somehow work with them, get it off the main floor, then yeah, I could work with them that way. Sorry.
And I think that was the intent, was that
Yeah.
it was you were continuing to work with residential on the second floor, correct? Alan?
Yes, I do have a couple of residential on the second floor, right?
Okay.
And half of the ground floor is also have residential on it, and that's one of the items I'm looking to get approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other committee members want to weigh in on this? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah,
And then-
so I'm kind of okay with having some residential on the ground floor as long as it's considerably smaller. We talk about the fact that we need different varieties and different range, price ranges for attainable housing. So maybe this provides an opportunity for lower rental fees if the accommodation is smaller. So I'm open to either all commercial or reducing that residential considerably. So I'm happy to make a motion to defer, to have the development come back with an alternative design. If I can get a seconder for that.
Well, why don't you just hang on to that for a minute and we'll go around and
Okay.
see whether there's other comments. I see Penny has her hand up and we'll see whether we need to do that or not.
Okay.
Go ahead, Penny.
Thank you, Mayor Lennon. I agree with Councillor Burke, especially because the design had originally been submitted when it was permissible to have residential on the ground floor. I am happy to have a reduced amount used for the residential. And I would just like to say that the draft that we have of the facade of the building, really in favor of. It very well blends in with the building next to it, and I think it would be a great addition to our Main Street.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Hearn, go ahead.
Yeah, everyone else weighed in, so I might as well weigh in as well. I would prefer to have it all commercial on the main street. I do think we need to have vibrant main streets, and as our community grows, we're going to need that space. However, appreciating that kind of the terms of engagement kind of changed partway through. I do agree with Councillor Burke's recommendation of a compromise and a smaller space that still looks commercial and still acts commercial for the majority of it.
Okay. So I'm going to go to you, Alan. Is there an opportunity to work within kind of the parameters that we've discussed at this point?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for your comment, Councillor Burke and Rankin and all of you, to be honest. Yes, I can reduce the residential on the ground floor. Like I said before, I can make it into a 1-bedroom or a bachelor. So it's affordable for anybody who wants to come and live on the ground floor, and make sure that the area of the commercial is enlarged substantially.
Okay. Curtis?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lennox. I'd just like to add that if the committee chooses to defer the application, we certainly could work with the applicant and try and get it back as soon as possible for a final decision.
Okay, thank you. You know, I don't know about the practicality of it, but I think if we could aim for a target of 25%, I would be more open to that type of thing. I realize that by the time you do a floor plan, it may not work out to that, but if that's a goal that we could work towards, I think I would be more supportive of it as well. So I think we could entertain a motion to defer this application. I think Councillor Burke, you were prepared to make that motion.
I was.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Hearn? Okay, any discussion on deferral of this application pending further discussion with the developer? Okay, I'll call the motion for all those in favor of deferral. That's carried. Thank you. So we'll give you and our staff some more work to do, Alan, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you all for your help.
Okay, we'll move to adjournment then of the Committee of Adjustment. I have a recommendation here that the Committee of Adjustment meeting of February 6th, 2023 be adjourned at 3:09 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're adjourned from our Committee of Adjustment meeting. And we'll switch to our public meeting for the zoning bylaw amendment. And I'll call the public meeting to order and ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest in regard to this application, ZBA 01/23, Township of Wellington North. I have none to declare. Councillor McCabe?
I have none.
Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Burke?
No.
Councillor Rankin?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. The owner applicant of this in this application is the Township of Wellington North, and the land subject to the proposed amendment is described as 9442 Highway 6, West Owen Sound Road, Part Lot 13, Division 1, Registered Plan 61R 8621, Part 12. The property is 5.11 hectares in size and is currently vacant. Purpose and effect of the application: the property is currently zoned agricultural site specific A-71, which only permits the use of the property as a sanitary landfill and associated buffer area. The purpose and effect of the amendment is to rezone the lands from agricultural site specific A-71 to agricultural site specific A-114 to permit the use of the property for rural industrial uses. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners as well as mailed to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on January 13th, 2023.
Great, thank you. Curtis?
Thank you, Mayor Lennox, councillors, staff, and members of the public. So the purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from an agricultural site specific to an agricultural site specific for a different purpose. The current zoning only permits the use of the property as a sanitary landfill and associated buffer. And the proposed rezoning would permit the future use of the property for agricultural, commercial, and rural industrial uses. The subject property is currently vacant, and it's approximately 5.11 hectares, which is 12.62 acres in size, and is owned by the Township of Wellington North. The subject property is identified as prime agricultural area under provincial policy in the County of Wellington official plan. As I've stated, the property is currently zoned in agricultural site specific zone. It shares similar zoning to the county landfill in the rear. And the permitted uses are limited to only a landfill or a buffer area. Speaking to the location adjacent to the Riverstown Waste Facility, there is a guideline called a D4 series guideline, and this has been established by the Ministry of Environment. And it specifies that there's restrictions and controls on land use in the vicinity of landfills and dumps in order to protect the health, safety, convenience, and welfare of residents near such facilities. The guideline applies to all proposals for land use on or near operating and non-operating landfills and dumps which contain municipal solid waste. Planning staff have spoken with County of Wellington Solid Waste Services Division about the need for a D4 series study, and Solid Waste Services has confirmed that it will be required. However, they're accepting that this could be a condition placed on a holding provision as part of a holding provision on the zoning. And the reason for this would allowing for a condition is that the study needs to be catered to the site specific development that's being proposed. So in this case, that hasn't been finalized what exactly is being built and where. So at that point, the D4 series study would need to be completed. And the study will look at such things as any mediation or mitigation requirements, look at setbacks and those sorts of things. So we have proposed as part of the zoning bylaw to include a holding provision that would require this D4 study to be completed prior to development and the issuance of a building permit. We note that site plan approval will be required for the proposed development, which will finalize details relating to buffering, fencing, snow storage, and drainage. We did receive a letter from neighboring property owner, Mr. Horst. I don't know if he's in attendance today or on Zoom, but he did. There is a letter in your package where he's identified he feels there's an existing drainage issue in the area, and county staff have met with Mr. Horst fairly recently within the last year or two, and made some changes to the site, to the county property. So what I'm suggesting in light of his ongoing concern that we in the near future have a meeting with township staff, Mr. Horst and the county staff to review drainage in the area. It appears there is a drainage swale that drains from the south to the north to the river that would cross through 3 or 4 different properties there. So that's what I suggest that this meeting be held in the future to discuss any drainage issues in the area. In terms of just wrapping up here, we've prepared a draft zoning bylaw amendment that's attached to this report for council's consideration. And we've included that the proposed zoning permit agriculturally related commercial and industrial uses and rural industrial uses, and that these uses be subject to the rural industrial zone regulations. And further, that there be buffering provided, which could include berming, tree planting, and fencing adjacent to any existing residential dwellings, which would be to the north, which is Mr. Horst's property, and there's another dwelling to the south. So in conclusion, planning staff have no concerns with the proposed application, as the application is consistent with applicable provincial policy and generally conforms with the official plan. Thank you.
Thank you. We received correspondence from the Environmental Planning Coordinator, Saugeen Conservation Authority, and the letter referenced from Lauren Horst. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
No, there has not.
Okay, thank you. The bylaw will be considered at the regular council meeting following the public meeting. Any persons wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw must submit a written request. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the applicant and or the public. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak to this application?
I'm not sure, if Mr. Martin, James Martin, did you want to add anything?
Hello, can you hear me okay there?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm probably ahead of myself here a little bit. I'm listening in. I got an invitation. I guess I'm very interested in this property. So, yeah, just basically listening in at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this application from the applicant or the public? Okay, we'll switch over to questions or comments from council. Councillor McCabe.
Thanks. And through you, I guess just going through this and listening to what Curtis just said about the solid waste services D4 study, should we just wait to hear back from that before we decide to switch it to A114, or does that have a huge impact on it at all, Curtis or Darren or whoever?
Yeah, thanks through Mayor Lennox to Councilor McCabe. So I guess it comes down to an order of operations. So the study can't be completed until we know exactly what's being proposed. So the study will look at the exact site plan, where things are going, and where they're located. So then the study will have to speak to that proposal and then review if it's appropriate and acceptable based on the existing situations with the landfill. So these are required for other developments near landfills, and it could be old landfills as well that are closed in the municipality or throughout the county. So I did speak specifically with solid waste services and discuss the sort of order of operations with them, and they were satisfied that it could be a holding condition in this case. So,
Okay, thanks, Curtis.
Any other questions or comments from council? So I think if we were to proceed with this, I'll just ask Curtis, and the study then determines that, say, what's proposed is not possible. What happens to this zoning once we've established it?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lennox. So the study, the guidelines really focus on sensitive land uses. So if there was a residential use being proposed or a hospital or daycare, they have much stricter standards than rural industrial type use. So the study, the design would need to account for any mitigation measures that are identified, and there could be none ultimately required, or there could be, depending on the specific scenario of the landfill in that area. So at the end of the day, the applicant may, if there were requirements, that they'd have to address them and design appropriately or change their design. And the council would ultimately have to lift the holding provision before it could be used. So I guess your question is there a scenario where it not be appropriate to be developed? And I guess ultimately it could be, but we wouldn't know without a specific proposal and again, what's specifically proposed on the site.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I just wanted to clarify I think from what you're saying is that it likely there might be some further measures required, but most likely would be appropriate in this location. Okay. Did you?
Yeah, speak on the microphone. Yes, that it is that we have not identified any initial issues with the proposed rural industrial use.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, we will be dealing with the zoning bylaw once we adjourn the public meeting. So with that, I'll adjourn the public meeting, or I have a recommendation to adjourn the public meeting. And need a mover and a seconder for that the public meeting of February 6, 2023 be adjourned at 3:21 p.m. I get a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favor? That's carried. So we're adjourned from that public meeting. Just have to shuffle some of my paperwork here. And we'll come back to our regular council agenda. Okay. So I have a recommendation in our regular council agenda that we resume our council meetings. So that the recommendation is that the council of the corporation of the Township of Wellington North resume the February 6th, 2023 regular meeting of council at 3:22 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Hearn. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have the passage of the bylaw coming out of that public meeting. And the recommendation is that bylaw number 10-23 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 66-01 being a zoning bylaw for the Township of Wellington North. We read a first, second, and third time and enacted with regard to West Owen Sound Road, Part Lot 13, Division 1, Registered Plan 61R 8621, Part 12, and is municipally known as 9442 Highway 6, Township of Wellington North. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Burke. Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have 3 deputations this afternoon. So first on the list, we have Rachel Carey. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
Welcome, Rachel. And as you can see, we've got a lengthy meeting today, so I'm sure staff explained about our time limits and so on. 10 minutes.
Yes, Mayor Lennox, I've timed myself. I'm gonna shrank it down.
So thank you for joining us today and welcome. And I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Lennox and esteemed council members, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about the request for zoning change from R2 to R3 in the last 2 vacant lots on my street, King Street East. I would also like to thank all of you for taking the time outside of meetings and working hours to speak to me, my family, my friends and neighbors about our concerns. All of you either spoke to me on the phone or came to visit the neighborhood, and that was greatly appreciated by all of us. My husband, son, and I have lived in our home for 30 years, working and volunteering in and around Mount Forest. We're not engineers or big developers or city planners or politicians. So in our quest to understand why our council would even consider putting 18 townhouses on the last 2 vacant lots of our street, we have spoken to many people. The overwhelming response was one of concern for the exacerbation of issues we already have in our neighborhood. There are areas of some properties, including the lots in question, that are inaccessible due to waterlogged soil for several months a year. Garbage piled curbside is often strewn or blown all over our properties. Cars zoom by ignoring the speed limit or stop signs. There's been a steady loss of mature trees and green space, and an increase in noise and light pollution from building density. And this is all the case without the addition of a huge multiple family structure on those 2 vacant lots. The reason we know these things is because we've lived in the neighborhood for years. But Mr. Mahmood, Mr. Khan, and McTrack Capital and 427 Management Service Incorporated have the wherewithal to have people do a traffic impact letter, a hydrant flow test report, a stormwater management and sanitary concept report, and a planning justification report. Then a planning report was presented by Matthew Dowse, the senior planner for the County of Wellington at the December 19th meeting. Since that meeting, I've received and read the report from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. I also called the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to inquire about the various species of birds and animals living in the untended portion of our joint properties, and to mention the sighting of a threatened bird species, the bobolink. I was told that either the township or the developer has probably already done a wildlife survey or breeding bird survey, although I wasn't able to locate the results of that study. Perhaps that could be emailed to me at some point. We can't afford to hire people to do reports like that, nor did we have time to do that before the December 19th meeting where the public had a chance to speak. McTrack Capital and 427 Management Service Incorporated used their considerable resources to spend months preparing the reports to give to the senior planner for the December 19th meeting. We in the neighborhood had a little more than 2 weeks' notice to the effect that the proposed development would be the 18 units in the form of a cluster of 2-story townhouses rather than the 4 to 6 units that we had heard about previously, and that we could attend a meeting to voice our concerns. After that December 19th meeting, I realized that I had to do more. I felt I'd been caught wrong-footed, and although I had had my say, I felt that my voice wasn't enough. So my family and I spent a couple of weeks going door to door to homes that face onto King Street and homes on Wellington Street that back onto the lots in question. We spoke to homeowners and renters whose lives would be impacted by a big development should the council agree to McTrack's request for a zoning change from medium to high density housing right in the middle of our neighborhood. We showed people the plan and heard many reactions that bolstered our belief that we were not alone in our concern. More than 50 people signed our petition, which I think you all got copies of. The petition did not ask council to refrain from developing our town. It did not ask council to prevent Mr. Mahmoud and his family from building homes and living there. It merely asked council to retain the R2 zoning for the 2 lots on King Street East. We felt that sufficient housing could go on those lots with a medium density zoning. It was concerning to hear how many neighbors were cynical about our chances of being heard by our council. It's sad if people don't trust their elected officials, and even sadder if our elected officials listen to developers rather than the local tax-paying citizens of this township. Mr. Mahmoud said at the last meeting that he would like to move his family onto King Street, and he said that it would make for a lively neighborhood. If he likes our community enough to move his family there, it seems strange that he feels the need to change the community. Perhaps he doesn't see what my neighbors and I see in our little corner of town. We see a balance between houses and green space. And we would hope that developers, planners, and councillors would be thoughtful in their planning in order to protect that peaceful balance around us, rather than building for the sake of building. Over the years, we've watched our neighborhood grow as more and more homes were built on the land around us, and all the structures fit into the R2 zoning. We reasonably expected our neighborhood to stay that way. We dutifully paid our taxes and gradually made our home into our forever home where we wish to retire. We expected that other people who built in our area would have to follow the same zoning requirements as our builder. And they did until now. To have the zoning changed for the last 2 remaining lots would seem like a betrayal of the trust we all put in our town leaders and planners. Mayor Lennox and members of council, I imagine all of you said in your speeches and door-to-door chats during the election, I will listen to the voices of my constituents, or words to that effect. Well, here's your chance. Let this be the time that you do that. I'm sure that there are lots of times in your busy lives when you make decisions for the growth and development of Wellington North. Times when you have to put your own feelings aside to do what will bring in tax dollars. Times when the higher ups are pushing you to do certain things to which you may not agree. Times when the weight of the township is on your shoulders. And we thank you for carrying that weight for all of us. This time we're asking you to listen to the voices from our neighborhood, not the developers, not the moneymakers, not the higher ups. We're asking you to be empathetic to our plight and imagine how you would feel in our position. We're asking you to listen to the voices of your constituents, taxpayers, the people you represent, and say no to rezoning our neighborhood. Just because it can be done, it doesn't mean it should be done or that it has to be done. It's still a choice. The way it seems to me is that a developer bought the 2 last empty lots in a well-established neighborhood and, taking advantage of the Bill 23 furor, decided to squeeze as much out of those lots as he could. While the neighbors who in good faith bought property in a medium density area can only use their voices in an ocean of many other community members who have protested similar zoning changes, only to be ignored by their councils. I've looked over the amendments suggested by Bill 23, and nowhere could I find an amendment that said, don't listen to the people in your constituency, or accept all requests to change bylaws. Also, I noticed that in section 3.3 of the Wellington County Official Plan, it says that intensification and redevelopment should take into account small town scale and historic streetscapes. And in section 8.3.11, that residential uses should be compatible with surrounding uses in terms of dwelling type. Development is certainly being encouraged, and developers are getting a lot of help. I get that. So when the town creates new subdivisions, we expect that towns will be more dense, or that homes will be more densely built. But we are saying that in an established, peacefully balanced R2 neighborhood, changing the zoning in the last 2 lots to R3 is unreasonable and unconscionable. Let's prove the cynics wrong today. Let's have a meeting today where the voices of tax-paying citizens are heard and a bylaw stays in place. Let's leave the zoning in our neighborhood as R2. Thank you for your attention and for giving consideration to our concerns.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Did council have any questions for clarification for Rachel? Okay, so we have another one, Reed Rayfield. Welcome, Reed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I don't know how I'm going to top that one. You set me up. So on the zoning changing here, I'll just start off. Back in the summertime, they kind of set me off on a Sunday morning as I'm catching them opening up catch basin lids to check for grade. If you guys look at this, you can tell it's a wet zone. I live 2 doors down from these 2 empty lots. I've seen my neighbors try and cut their grass in the middle of summer. I've seen the lawnmower sit there for a couple of weeks because they're stuck. Why on their plan is there no water retention pond? You look at their plan for snow storage, that little lot, little space. When that's full, where are they going to put it? You're going to truck it into the town snow dump? To me, I don't think that's right. They have a little space for playground where kids play. My front yard is bigger. My 2 kids take up that front yard of playing. So we're going to stick 18 units into 2 empty lots where maybe 4 houses should go to give green space for everybody to play, able to get in. They have private garbage. It's not going to be private garbage. First 6 units, they're going to use the street. They're going to go buy that $2 bag. They're kicking it to the curb. They're not walking to the backyard to put in the garbage can. That's going to end up in my backyard. I don't know. I have 1,000 other things I could say. Just keep it nice and short. You guys want to get going, so. But yeah, I've thousands of questions to go about this. But 18 units in there, you might as well go buy shipping containers and stick in there. You can get probably 24 or 30 in there. But 18 units in that little spot is just unheard of, especially for our little street. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thanks, Reed. Council have any questions for Reed? Okay, not seeing any. Next, we have Farhan Mahmood. Welcome, Farhan.
Thank you so much, Council. Sure. Thank you so much. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Mayor, as well as councillors. I really appreciate that you're giving this opportunity to express our point of view today. We all know more housing is needed. We hear it from all directions that we have a housing crisis. First-time home buyers, young families are struggling to get into the housing market. And every municipal and provincial guideline states that we need to increase density and provide housing to the first-time home buyer. Our project with this, our vision with this project was to address those needs and provide housing to young families like my own family, while preserving the neighborhood at reasonable prices. If you can go to next slide, please. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about the neighborhood of King Street. We bought this property over a year ago because we grew up in Guelph and our goal was to grow our family in a small community. If you observe 425, 427 King Street, I understand my neighbors believe these are two small lots, but this is 1.5 acre of land. If you take a look into the housing in the back, there is clustered townhouses. With all due respect, there is multiple zonings in this neighborhood. There is R2, R1C on the side, R213 on the back side of it. And if you see on the opposite side of it, R3 already exists in this neighborhood. If you take a look into the density of the townhouses which are built in the back of it, they are much higher density than what we are proposing. And if you take a look into the density of the townhouses on Newfoundland on the left side of our property, again, there is townhouses which already exist there. Right in front of that, there is also cluster townhouses built by Wellington community. So with all due respect, to say that this is a neighborhood with just single family detached home is incorrect. Also, there is a church on the street which adds to the character of the town. As the times have changed, originally lots required to be much bigger as they require to have wells, septic tanks to accommodate. But as you see, more and more development has happened. The lot sizes have gone smaller as municipal services are available and so on. Municipal services are available for those lots. Building 18 townhouses is a perfect balance between green space as well as the density and keeping up with what's happening in the neighborhood. And it is the need of our time as younger families are struggling every single day to buy a home. If we can go to next slide, please. This is our plan. Originally, a year ago, we started off this project, and to say the least, I did not know much about development. I still don't. So we rely heavily on municipal services. We worked very hard with the municipal and the planning department to come out with a joint solution. Our initial plan was to put 30 townhouses there. We work day in and day out, balancing what we need to do as well as what was the needs of the municipality. Over time, we realized that, and while working with the municipality, that we need to provide services such as amenities, garbage, green space, backyard, play areas, and came up with a solution to reduce from 30 units down to 18 units for this 1.5 acre of land. That keeps ample green space as well as it gives us the opportunities for the younger families to buy a home. I'm sure you guys have heard, but younger families are not able to get into housing right now. No matter which direction they look into, they are not able to buy homes. This is a perfect combination of combining green space also with the need of our time and giving us a housing there. We can go to the next slide. Me and my partner, Morgan, we have had a chance to meet with as many neighbors as we could. We went door to door, meeting with neighbors, sat down with them, had a cup of coffee with them to understand their concerns and their needs. And this is not a proposal we are coming after just 1 month after we bought the land to put these houses. We've been working at it for over a year. And what we realized from our neighbors that their needs are a little bit different than what we originally thought. So we changed the proposal and reduced the unit to 18 units. A lot of our neighbors showed interest and they realized that the development need to happen. If we can go back to the slide with the floor plans, one of the biggest, sorry, one more back. One of the biggest challenge, if you take a look into these lots, is they have people walking through them. Our development resolved that issue as it fenced that area in, and there is houses which are built over there. A lot of our neighbors have also shown interest in buying a unit from us. Some of them are contractors, and they have mentioned they would like to work when we start the construction, and we have welcomed everybody into the project. Sorry, if we can go further. One more. Yes. Our neighbors showed us concern. They were concerned about traffic. So I'm sorry, I'm not a big developer. I don't have billions of dollars. No, I don't. But despite of that, hearing from neighbors, we conducted a full traffic report for the neighborhood, which I paid out of our own pocket to make sure that the neighbors were in line. And the traffic report clearly states that our development will have negligible impact. We also heard concerns about garbage collection. The main reason why that concern was there is there is community housing in front of our, not in front, on the right side of our property. And because of the issues they have seen with that community housing, they think our garbage will be that way. That's not the case. And we address those issues by privatizing our garbage collection to make sure we are not a burden on municipality. If we can go to the next slide, please. This is the conclusion of the traffic report. Clearly, it states that, the impact is not there. Other issue we heard was the parking. A lot of our neighbors were concerned about us parking on the street. So we decided to have more parking spots than what we initially started with. At the moment, for 18 units, we have 2 parking spots for each unit, 1 outside, 1 inside, plus 5 additional parking spots, a lot more than what was required by the municipality. Finally, if we can go to the next one. Garbage collection and play area. As I've spoken about garbage collection, we will be taking care of our own garbage. It's going to be a condo corporation. So if any resident, he is in violation of garbage, they will get a fine from the condo corporation. It will not be an impact on any of the neighbors. Play area, every townhouse has a much larger backyard compared to what the neighboring the townhouses are in the backside of Wellington Street. Plus, we have created a large play area for our kids. Trust me, when I started off this project, I have 2 young daughters. First concern they had was we want the play area. And some of my neighbors had that concern. So I have taken them on the lot, shown them the space where the play area is going to be. And a lot of them was satisfied with that. We can go to the next slide. Water drainage and snow removal. This has been a concern presented to us by our neighbors as well. So even before we could do anything, we went and got the stormwater management plan completed. And as per the engineer, the drainage, what it is on the property at the moment, our plan would actually reduce that drainage, and it will contain all the rainwater into our property by underground water tanks. Snow removal will be the responsibility of the condo corporation. So no matter what happens, how much snow is there, we have more than enough storage, not only in that snow area which is dedicated, but there is also a lot of green space where the snow can be arranged. If we can go to the next slide. We are building townhouses for our family and to enhance the culture and diversity of the neighborhood. Condo corporation will be fully self-sufficient for lawn maintenance, garbage collection, snow removal. Traffic will have negligible impact due to this development. Young families will have perfect homes to put roots to start their families. And our vision is in line with what the municipality want to do, what the province of Ontario wants to do. We just want to be able to have ability to create housing for young and first-time home buyers. I just want to introduce people who are part of this project. So if you guys can please stand up. If you take a look into it, these are the young owners of this development. There is no big corporation. There is no giant who is trying to make the maximum profitability. And what we have proposed is not the maximum use of the land, but we wanted to build sustainable housing for ourselves and for our families and blend into community. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Farhan. Any questions from council for Farhan? Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lennox. My question is, you have repeatedly said that you want to build housing for young families and first-time buyers. Can you give us an idea of what you believe the rental along with condo fees would be? I'm just looking for an estimated cost. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on it.
Of course. So condo fee is estimated to be approximately $150 for this condo townhouse by per condo owner. All of these properties are going to be owner occupied as we are moving in our families, and a lot of our friends who went to University of Guelph, they are moving up their families into this complex. If there is a renter, we estimated the tenant will pay maybe about $1,600-1,700, but that's not the intention at all. The goal is to keep all the housing owner occupied.
Okay. Councillor McCabe, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I just answered it actually.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hearn?
Yes, just to tag on to Councillor Burke's question about the condo fees. There's several different kinds of condo arrangements. What kind of things would that cover to help maintain the standard in the neighborhood?
Absolutely. So what we are looking to do is the condo corporation, the property is going to be freehold property, but it will have portal condo fees with it. So the road maintenance, garbage collection, grass maintenance on the front of the property will be the responsibility of the condo corporation. We do want to give full ownership to the people who will be buying these projects in it. So the property will be freehold, but all the areas will be covered by the condo corporation. And again, going back to green space, we're going to have 42.5% of this area in green space. The lot coverage, what we are building on, is only 22.2%. So there is going to be plenty of green space there.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Rankin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I was just wondering if there's any possibility of reducing the number of units on the site. I understand that you could have built more, but even when you look around the neighborhood, there are no other 18-unit cluster houses 2 stories high in that neighborhood. Just wondering, I know in your statement you said that you have agreeable understanding with the neighbors, but I'm just wondering with the letters that are being submitted and the signatures, whether you could not sort of compromise and reduce the number of units on that property.
Okay, Farhan?
Thank you, Councillor. I really appreciate that. And at the moment, I do not have that flexibility. Please understand, we have spent over a year conducting all those studies. Most of that money has come from our credit cards, money from our loved ones, and loans. That is not the money which we had. If we change the plan at this stage, that would require us to conduct most of those studies again, adding to not only a very costly delay, but also for us not to move our families into this neighborhood. So at this moment, I want to stay with 18 units as it is the perfect fit for what we are looking to do. Below that, unfortunately, construction cost goes through the roof. And what happens is then this becomes not affordable for the families who are looking to move in.
Any other questions for Farhan at this moment? Not seeing any, so thank you, Farhan, for your presentation.
Thank you so much for Mayor, all the councillors, all the concerned citizens. I'm really hoping to work with you guys and make this a better neighborhood. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. So just for everyone's information. We will get to this rezoning application. We have some other stuff that we have to get through, so I'm sure that it will be one of the items that council will want to discuss more thoroughly, so stay tuned if you can. We'll move on now to adoption of the minutes of the council and public meetings. So I have a recommendation that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on January 16th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Rankin. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to items for consideration. So this is council's opportunity to pull out those items on our agenda that we want to have some further discussion on. I'm sure that we will be pulling out the planning report 2A with regard to the lots we've been discussing. Anybody, Councillor McCabe?
Yeah, I would like to pull out 2A, Mayor Lennox, 3C with regards to volunteer week. 4B, bless you, with regards to Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, fund and OSEF funding for 2023. And then 5B with regards to Arthur and Mount Forest's water. And then I think it would be good to hear from our CAO with regards to 6C.
6C, year in review.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any others? Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah, so 2C.
2C, that's the site plan agreement.
Yeah, it's the 33 units, 4 stories, yeah. 3B.
3B, that's the farmer's market.
Yes.
Okay.
5A.
Cork Street Rehabilitation Project.
Yes. And I'm also wondering if I believe it's 7D shouldn't be a part of the conversation at 2A.
Okay, so you're talking about the correspondence in regard to 425 and 427.
Correct.
Okay. Any others? Anyone would
No,
like to?
I'm good.
Okay, Councillor Rankin and then Councillor Hearn.
I'm interested in some that have already been mentioned as well, but I would like to add 6B, the livestock impoundment.
6B. Yeah, okay.
And 7A, please, J Marmeats.
Okay. Is that it for you, Councillor Rankin?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hearn.
There's nothing left, Caroline. I did want to say when we have a second, if I could have a 5-minute break, in a minute.
Well,
my chiropractor Marie is going to yell. We've been sitting down for 2.5
well, why don't we do that right now before we get started on these?
There's a couple more that we need to pull.
Okay.
I would suggest that you pull bylaw 00623. That's the bylaw that deals with the King Street proposal, so it doesn't get like omnibus.
Okay.
And bylaw G, which is 1123, that's the one that the heading says sewage allocation agreement when it's really a development agreement. And also, did you want to mention the 6D is the CIO's report for modernization and efficiency, and there's a presentation. No, not that's okay. Never mind, I'll stop talking. Thank you. I'm not heard. It's D. It's already been posted.
6B.
Okay. So why don't we pass the motion to deal with everything else? We'll take a break and then come back and go through it. Okay, so we've got a motion here to deal with all those that haven't, well, let me go back and recap, make sure we haven't forgot anything. So pulled for further discussion is 2A, 2C, 3B, 3C, 4B, 5A, 5B, 6B, 6C, 7A, and 7D. Did I miss something?
2 bylaws.
And the 2 bylaws, item C and item G in bylaws. Okay. Sorry, let me get to the recommendation here. The recommendation is that all items listed under items for consideration on the February 6th, 2023 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor Burke. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we will take a 5-minute break. It is now 3:57, so at 4:03, 4:02, we'll reconvene.
It's out of my hand. Where is that? Pardon me? I didn't know. I don't know. Mayor. Is there room people on that? Yeah. There's a report first. There's a report coming up fairly quickly. No, it's gonna happen today. Yep. Second item on the, no. First item on we're gonna deal with next is the report, you know, of course, on the bylaw. Yeah, it's I don't know if this is out. I agree. Yeah, no, it's probably that I don't. Because I was hoping to be a short list.
Welcome back. We'll try to get rolling onto our agenda again. And so I declare the recess over and we're back in session. So the first item we're going to deal with is item 2A. This is the planning report with regard to 425, 427 King Street East. And I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the planning report prepared by Matthew, Senior Planner, County of Wellington, dated February 6, 2023, regarding 425, 427 King Street East, Mount Forest, zoning bylaw amendment. This is for McTratch Capital and 427 Management Service. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get that discussion going? Moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor McCabe. And with that, we'll open that up for discussion. I think I'm going to try to start us off a little bit on this one this afternoon. So we have had quite a bit of correspondence and information with regard to this application from both the applicant and the neighbors concerned. So just like to paraphrase some of the concerns I heard from residents more than once. So includes changing the character of the neighborhood, erasing the small town character, too dense to be compatible with surrounding properties, should be single family detached like neighboring properties, private developer whose only motive is profit, loss of green space, sound and light pollution concerns, increased traffic concerns, similar to the loss of green space, loss of a pastoral environment, and questions around encouraging intensification that is consistent and maintains the stability and character of the neighborhood. So I listened to all the neighbors' concerns and I understand their perspective on it. I think that our job as council is to take a broader perspective too, is what does our community need at large? And for myself, I dream of building the community for today and tomorrow that is a place where residents and their families can build their lives for the long term and find housing for all stages of life. I want housing that suits young growing families. I want housing that's suitable for households who may wish to downsize in their community and be near to their friends and family. I want to have housing suitable for young people starting out in life as young adults. Enabling people to, as much as possible, be able to live, work, and play in our community is critical for me to maintaining our small town way of life. And it's good for the environment if people aren't having to commute long distances to go to work. Let me address the litter and light pollution issue. I believe the concern around litter in this proposal should be minimized because the applicant is saying they're going to operate it as a condominium corporation and will be responsible for all their own waste removal. I think it is reasonable for the applicant to design any internal lighting in the development to be carefully directed to minimize affecting neighbors. And that would be something I'd be looking for when we get to the site plan agreements stage. With regard to traffic, loss of green space, and loss of pastoral environment, no one that I know who has ever lived near an open space property would say that they wanted it to be developed. These lots have been surrounded with development for many years, and to expect that they would remain undeveloped is not realistic. It was always going to result in the loss of green space and increased traffic. In regard to the comment about profit making, I find that one a little hard to swallow. I don't think that demonizing a developer because they have a reasonable expectation of profit while making their investments, it seems upside down to me. These are businesses that are investing their resources and accepting risk in exchange for an expectation of profit. I struggle to see how that differs from any other business in our community. Don't we believe in our community and want businesses to invest here? I certainly do. And what's the alternative? Is it taxpayer funded development? I don't think most people are on board for that. Also, to my knowledge, the opportunity to buy and develop these lots was open to all the residents and people at large. In regard to density and compatibility, given the size, shape, and economics of land values, it's extremely unlikely that these lots would ever be developed as only single-family detached. The existing R2 zoning would have allowed housing to be built, such as semi-detached dwellings, and the lot area under that scenario could have accommodated at least 12 units. The proposed units are only 2-story, as others in the neighborhood, and as is permitted in any residential zone in our township. There are other townhomes nearby, and this proposal holds similarity in building type to those. I move around town and look at the long evolution in the type and of built form of housing, whether it's the stately Victorian homes, the post-war homes, the 1970s bungalows. Housing type has evolved over time. I wonder what the residents on Fergus Street North thought when the Byland subdivision was built. Then in terms of economics, and that's been a changing environment. Average household income from Stats Canada and Wellington North is approximately $64,000. Based on standard figures and terms, that level of household income would support a monthly mortgage payment or rent of about $1,600. At today's interest rate, that would support a mortgage of $250,000. Some have suggested these lots should be restricted to single-family detached. Well, who would live in those homes? Based on market listings of newer single detached homes in Mount Forest, these would command a price of close to $1 million because of the large lot size. This would mean it would take triple the Wellington North average household income to be able to pay for that single detached home on those lots. Building single-family detached homes on lots this large hasn't been economical for quite some time, as the value of service land has made it that prohibitive. I'd like to talk about workforce. Our local services and businesses are clamoring to find people to work. All types of services and businesses need more workforce to make our organizations sustainable. We need housing that's economically accessible to attract people here to work. If we don't allow for the construction of housing that meets a lower price point, people will not be attracted to live and work here. For example, we've been working for many years to attract healthcare workers to come and work here. One of the issues raised time and again by health professionals who are choosing not to stay here is a lack of appropriate housing to build their life here. Don't we need to ensure we address that? You know, we saw the results of not having adequate healthcare workers in the summer when the emergency room had to be closed. I certainly don't want to see that happening again. Some folks have even suggested that people who live in townhomes are less desirable members of the community. Quite frankly, I find that suggestion offensive. Because if that is truly the case, then I think I fall into the undesirable category, as I have lived in townhomes and other types of higher density housing, because that is what I could afford at the time. And there's also been comments about, well, do you live in the neighborhood? And I think the insinuation is if I don't live in the neighborhood, I don't care about what the implications of this development are. Well, I don't think that could be further from the truth. For me, small town character is much more than a particular built form of housing. It's about people. It's about building a place where families can call home for generations and work to build our community together. We absolutely need a greater variety of housing types that can meet the needs of our residents throughout their lives. Townhomes for me are part of the mix of housing that is desperately needed. I say yes to building more housing options for families. I say yes to building more housing options for our economy. But most of all, I say yes to more housing options because our small town community absolutely needs it. If there was a way to meet the needs of the neighborhood and give the neighbors what they were asking for, please tell me how, because I hate having to go against the wishes of residents. Please help me find a solution to this problem because I don't see another alternative than to support applications like this. Okay. Any other questions or comments at this point? Councillor Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lennox. So I would first like to thank the residents for taking the time to share their concerns. Over the past few weeks, as Mayor Lennox has mentioned, there have been many phone calls, letters, site visits exchanged over the development for 425 and 427 King Street East. And also through the deputations and public meetings where residents are encouraged to provide comments, giving them a sense of ownership over the decisions which may affect them in their neighborhoods. I agree that we have had a lot of discussion about what the development should look like, and there are some differences of opinion. But the one constant that I heard was not 18, not in 18 cluster townhome. The housing density in the area is significant, and further intensification neither respects the neighborhood or the small town character, which we constantly around this council table discuss. And it is not just the character of a municipality is just not about housing, as Mayor Lennox alluded to. Zoning bylaws specifically on infill lots should not be changed, as this may be the only mechanism we have left to shape our communities and the ability to control the pace of growth both we as council and our residents are comfortable with in light of Bill 23. The green space, in my opinion, is inadequate, and I consistently on developments like these look for the play space for children and other individuals that live in communities such as this, that it's adequate. I've also pointed out before that the system is flawed when many issues that neighbors address as concerns are dealt with during the site plan control, which happens after rezoning. So I will be using my voice and choose to support my constituents and will not be supporting the rezoning to construct an 18 cluster townhome. I think this development needs to be revisited in size.
Other questions, comments? Councillor McCabe?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. And I know Farhan and the neighbors have discussed stuff already. And I know there's still concern out there based on what Rachel has said and all the correspondence that we've had in our agenda package. But I think this is the real situation that I see in my head is the county has already okayed this. This falls under the PPS. We need housing, we need affordable housing. And so say Township unanimously says no to this development. I would imagine that this would then go to the Ontario Land Tribunal and taxpayers would have to foot the bill because we would lose in that Court of Appeal at the Ontario Land Tribunal because the county's already okayed it. It falls again within the PPS. And that's a tax burden that I don't support and I can't defend publicly. Another reason why I'm all right with this, and I have heard all of your concerns and I quite understand it, is one of the biggest things that we face right now, especially with Bill 23 and in Ontario, is the taking of prime agricultural land out of production. And to put 18 families in separate semi-detached or detached homes, the amount of land acres that would have to be taken out of prime ag land is, again, is something that I could not support either. Our township is based solely, well, not solely, but quite a bit on agriculture, and I understand the need for new housing and affordable housing and attainable housing, whichever way you want to slice it. I have a real hard time not supporting this. I will be very blunt and honest with you guys, and I have listened to everything that you guys have said and taken it under quite a consideration. But I know there's issues with the wetlands there, and maybe this is something that Darren or the county can address. There is quite a bit of difference in elevation from the edges of the single detached homes that are there to where this land is now. I imagine at the time when King Street was built up there probably was land brought in to build up the grade. And would that be something that would happen in this location so that there's not that swamp effect or wet land that people can't cut their grass on?
Not sure if that microphone's on or not, Darren.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Yep, for stormwater management and servicing, we'll look at that through site plan control, and we'll look at proper outlets, whether it needs to happen through easement out to Wellington Street or by pump up to King Street for storm and sewer.
Okay, thank you. And sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
And I think there was a concern, sorry, through you, Mayor, that this was going to be rentals. And I believe, as Farhan has mentioned, that it is going to be freehold and home ownership. And that's something that I think is desirable in our community. And I think something that the employers in this area, whether it's Arthur or Mount Forest or wherever, we need employees and we need housing for them. So thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Rankin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the comments that have been made. Yes, we need the housing. And yes, we need the people in that housing for employees in the area. However, I find that an 18-unit cluster in that location is not very palatable, especially to the neighbors that are there. And I believe if that unit could be located in another area that has similar type housing, it would be much better for the township and for the people living there. There must be other land that could have been used where there's a large building going in, not too far from it, and something similar in size would fit in just fine. Also, the neighborhood is also, it's medium density, yes, but when you drive around, it certainly looks filled. And I do too have a concern about the trees. Mr. Mahmood has suggested that the trees are on his property and not the township's, and they'll be picked down to accommodate the buildings, which I'm sorry to see that any diminishing of them is going to occur. So, and I just feel that the building would be better off in another location and to maintain the integrity of that neighborhood. And I will be voting in favor of not having that many housing. I realize you don't need a single unit on the properties. You can have under R2, you can still have some multiple units, which I think the neighborhood may accept rather than an 18-unit one. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hearn?
I didn't put up my hand, but I was gonna. Everyone had said quite a bit, and you know, I'm pretty passionate about urban sprawl and farmland. There's a huge problem with that, and if we don't treat that a little more wisely, that's going to disappear. And you know, you'd alluded to 12 units in R2 zoning, Mayor Lennox. I think I'd calculated 14. I'm not sure how much actually is allowed there, but you know, when you spoke about healthcare workers, and you know, you kind of brought up some personal opinions and some challenges that I had to go through in the last year, and that's with my son. And he's a registered nurse. He just graduated. Well, you guys, the council knows, but for the sake of the public, he graduated during COVID and worked really hard and took a full-time position prior to being registered and all of that. Worked his butt off, made 6 figures. Couldn't afford a place here to live. He's working full-time. He's down in Grand River Hospital today in the ER. If you guys need a nurse and someone to care for him, he saved a man's life the other day when the man was triaged incorrectly. A young nurse cannot afford to live here, and I'm okay because my son's going to take care of his mom. But what are we going to do as we age if nurses and registered practical nurses and others cannot afford to move to this community? And that's, you know, my heartstring moment for the day, but.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Burke.
Yeah, I have a question. Rachel Carey brought up in her presentation about the wetlands and the habitat, the loss of habitat there. Has there been a study? I know that the neighborhood group did not have a study, but I'm wondering if the developer did a study or has an intention of doing a study on those wetlands.
Okay, Darren's getting up to come to the mic, so we'll let him
Okay,
address that.
I apologize. I can't see anybody. My screen is black. But
Sorry,
I understand everybody can hear me, so that's all that really matters.
I'm not sure you want me to do the running commentary, but I'll try to keep you in the loop at least.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, a study has not been submitted to the township. The township has not asked for one. The Ministry of Environment has been in contact with both the township and the applicant on those matters.
Okay. Do you have anything further, Councillor Burke?
So I guess my follow-up question to Darren would be if their ministry finds finds deficiencies or things that need to be protected, how will that implicate this development?
Through you, Mayor Lennox, the ministry will take enforcement of those matters into its own hands. It won't be a township decision or enforcement issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Lisa?
Kind of a side comment, not necessarily directly related, but I'm just kind of wondering, the residents there are having some garbage concerns with the county, and I'm wondering whether there's a way that we could reach out in another capacity about maybe a better way to deal with that across the road. And that's a separate issue. And I didn't mean to muddy the waters here.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hearn. I'm happy to take that up with the solid waste staff and social services staff at the county. My understanding is it's often happens with wind and garbage blowing around, and that's a very difficult one to deal with. But I will again remind county staff about the problem we're having and see if they can offer some solutions to that. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I didn't mean to allude that we would be using prime agricultural land if the building were located elsewhere. I know Councillor Hearn's passion for that, but there is so much building that has gone on in the area, and right down London Road, that I thought that there should be land down there somewhere that is not prime agricultural land in which a building of this size could be located. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, on that topic, I think there's some information that might be useful. I'm going to ask our CAO to weigh in a little bit in terms of why our staff are recommending an application like this and how this fits into previous work we've been doing in the community. So.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lennox. Staff had done a very careful review of this application, and in terms of the planning context that this is coming forward to council in, there's been over the last several years a real concern about protecting prime agricultural land, encouraging development within the existing built up area, urban area of a municipality, and then actually looking to place in targets for density even in our greenfield areas. So overall, this application is looking at 18 units on, I think, 0.6 of a hectare of land. The density in terms of the people and jobs per hectare, which is a figure that the province uses, is about 58.7, I believe. And that's in line with the kinds of density that not only the province, but the county of Wellington and the township have anticipated. So in the 2017 growth management plan, it was looking at phasing in intensification over the next 20 to 30 years or so. After 2022, they were looking at density targets of around 50 people and jobs per hectare. So this is in line with that, and it's headed, those density targets are anticipated to get even higher into the 80 range. So development of increasing intensity is likely to be the norm. I think Mayor Lennox, you alluded to just the economics of development these days, and that is certainly another factor. And the fact is that this is within the built up urban area of the Mount Forest community. It's already serviced. It's close to other amenities in terms of both recreation, schools, and other commercial amenities as well. So in terms of creating that complete community, it's another way to do that. It provides additional housing options. So staff have recommended support of this application. They've worked with the developer throughout the development process in terms of doing pre-consult, which I think the developer noted that they were looking at initially much higher densities and more units. So this is a compromise that takes into account the comments both from residents, but also the advice that was provided by township planning staff.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions before I call the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
So just to be clear, the motion was to receive the report.
Correct.
Yeah, they've just voted to receive the report. The bylaw will come later in the meeting. You are welcome to stay as long as you want.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is item 2C, is in regard to a site plan agreement. So a recommendation here that the Council of Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information report DC 2023-004 for 5053745 Ontario Inc. Site plan agreement regarding the final approval of the 5053745 Ontario Inc. Site plan agreement. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Burke. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is twofold. One, how will this development be serviced? And two, I again understand the need for housing, but this is another 4-story unit, which is sort of out of the realm. Does the fire department have any concerns with being able to service these types of developments?
Okay, so servicing, I think we'll go to Matt Aston if I can to talk to that one, if you wouldn't mind, Matt.
Yep. And through you, Mayor Lennox, if we're talking about Jack's Way, there's a building proposed there. And the fire department has been fully engaged with the development, and they're not uncomfortable.
Okay.
I think our fire hydrant flows are good there. I'm positive they are. So it's but all that factors into the building development phase.
So that will be dealt with through site plan control?
It's been dealt with.
Okay.
Everything out there is good.
All right. So then this, like the servicing, is there services that run up London Road to service that? Or where will the services for water?
Yeah, so sanitary is going to come up that unopened Birmingham right away between Curve Rock and say Broomer.
Oh, okay.
And then water is kind of going to be a loop out at London, Jack's Way, and Durham. But I might ask for money in the future, Councillor Burke, to extend it down Birmingham is what I might say.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Any other questions in regard to this report? Comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any though. So I'll call the motion, then all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to 3B. This is in regard to the farmers market. And the recommendation is a bit of a lengthy one, but recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2023-002 Wellington North Farmers Market. And further, the council approve the Wellington North Farmers Market Rules and Responsibilities Agreement with the Victory Church and Community Center. And further, that the Economic Development Officer be authorized to sign the agreement. And further, that council direct staff prepare the necessary temporary road closure permit application for each Saturday from June 17th to September 30th from 8:30 a.m. to noon for the portion of 320 King Street East at the fairgrounds entrance in Mount Forest. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor Burke. And with that, we'll ask for any questions or comments on this one. Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Jill, for this report. This always reminds me that the good weather is coming eventually. And it also puts a highlight out to those folks that may want to be a vendor for the season. My question is though, management for the farmers market. Can you give us a little bit of an update on how that might work for 2023?
Sure, Councillor Burke, through you, Mayor Lennox. We're not exactly sure whether market manager Harry will be back full-time this year or not. We will know that in June. So at the start of the market, it will be myself as the market manager, and hopefully we'll be successful through the summer student grant program, and we'll have a summer student again this year that'll help out with the market manager job. So it'll be kind of a combination this year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Councillor Rankin?
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I would just like to say that the hospital auxiliary, of which I'm a member, is very thankful for the opportunity to have been part of the farmers market. And we have thoroughly enjoyed setting up the hospitality tent and enticing people to come sit and enjoy their coffee, as Dale has said. And hopefully next year we'll be able to enlarge in that area maybe and have more people come and sit and enjoy the Saturday mornings there. So we thank the hospital auxiliary. Thanks you very much for the opportunity. We will be back. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I would just add the comment to thanks DL for you and the Victory Church crew for making this possible. It's you know, when we first started with the farmers market, we were a little unsure whether there'd be enough uptake or not to make it go, but it's great to see the level of community involvement of people coming to exchange stories and buy some produce for their homes, especially after the challenges we've gone through with the last couple of years. Getting out and seeing people again is a welcome change, of which I'm ever more grateful of. So again, thanks to you, and please pass on our thanks to the Victory Church for their contribution to this process.
Thank you. I will, Mayor Lennox.
Okay, I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 3C. This is in regard to the Senior of the Year, National Volunteer Week, and Volunteer Newcomer celebrations. So we have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2023-003, being a report on the Senior of the Year Award, National Volunteer Week, and the upcoming Volunteer and Newcomer celebration. And further, that Council, in recognition of the important role that volunteers, not-for-profit organizations, and community groups play in our municipality, supports the Mayor's proclamation proclaiming April 16th to 22nd, 2023 as National Volunteer Week. And further, that Council invites all volunteers and newcomers in our community to join us on Thursday, April 20th, 2023 from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Arthur and Area Community Center for a volunteer and newcomer celebration. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Rankin. Open the floor for questions or comments. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, I think it's important that we always recognize our volunteers and our individuals and our service clubs within our community. And April 20th from, I believe it's 4:30 to 7 in Arthur at the arena is when we're having the volunteer celebration. And I think it's a great chance for our service clubs to hopefully recruit new people that are new to the area, maybe bring down the age gap a little bit, and also volunteer for our trail committee, the hospital auxiliary that Penny sits on, our historical societies and other community groups that are led by individual volunteers, and hopefully, and again, a chance for them to recruit. And I hope everyone can come out to Arthur and appreciate the I guess the work and the time and the energy that goes into what our volunteers do in this community. We couldn't do it without them.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I would just like to say the opposite side of what Councillor McCabe has just said about the volunteer groups being able to recruit new volunteers. Also, the newcomers that attend that are new to our town, and it's very difficult sometimes for people to be able to feel as though they're becoming part of the community. And this is a great way for them to be able to go around the room and see what options they have to join different things and feel as though they have become part of the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I would just add to both Councillor Rankin and Councillor McCabe's comments that there's a lot of aspects to volunteering in our community. Volunteer organizations are absolutely critical to our community, and they're absolutely critical to the lives of those who volunteer. Volunteering is important not only for what they accomplish, but also for the rewards that people who do volunteer get out of it. And I think it's great that we celebrate that and all that volunteering represents in our community. And there are many, many, many organizations that rely on volunteers, and not only rely, but thrive with volunteers and their commitment. So I'm delighted with staff support that we're able to celebrate this sort of thing, not only this time, but the other times that we have and the other times that we hope to continue to do so. Dale, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I apologize for my voice today to everyone. I just would like to take a couple seconds to just point out that it's that time of year again to nominate a Senior of the Year for our the annual Senior of the Year award. So we're hoping to bring that report to council and closed at the next council meeting. So if you have suggested nominees, please send your nominees to one of the members of the volunteer team, and we'll put that report together for the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to 4B. This is the report with regard to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information report TR 2023-04, being report on the 2023 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund allocation. Okay, I get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Hearn. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Councillor McCabe, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up and through you, Mayor, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, excuse me, like Wellington North is getting 1.35 million from that funding, which is going to go a long way in our township. And then another bit of a shout out to the OSIP funding, which is 1.97 million, which is again great to get our money back from the province and invest it in Wellington North.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So no pressure, Councillor McCabe, but your new role on the Roma board, I'm sure you'll be advocating for increasing those funding sources for us and and encouraging our provincial counterparts to index these with inflation. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're on to 5A now. This is a report with regard to rehabilitating Cork Street between Waterloo and Princess. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report Ops 2023-003, being a report on council approval of the Cork Street Rehabilitation Project, Waterloo and Princess Streets, in advance of the formal 2023 capital budget approval. Excuse me, and further that council approve a budget of $862,000, which will be included and assumed pre-approved within the 2023 capital budget for the reconstruction of this section of Cork Street. And further that council directs staff to commence procurement of this project as soon as possible. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this, please? Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor McCabe, and I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Burke.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. My question is, with us being on the horizon of having budgetary discussions for 2023, this is a large ask. And I'm just wondering if I can get some better background information as to why we feel the need that this needs to be pre-approved.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Burke. That section of Cork Street between Waterloo and Princess is in need of development, and kind of we might not have a budget till the end of March or into April even. So it would be advantageous for us to go to market for that project. And that's kind of why the ask is there, if that makes sense. And maybe I'm not explaining myself well.
Go ahead, Councillor Burke.
Yeah, so I think I understand what you're trying to say, Matt. I guess my question is why this roads project in particular, if we feel that the budget's going to be later in the spring, wouldn't that sort of encompass all of the road projects if we feel that we need to get the RFPs out sooner?
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Lennox. So that's a fair question. I think John Street and Cork Street are what staff are best positioned to deliver. And I guess in my seat, I thought Cork Street was the one to go move forward with. So they're kind of one, yeah, John Street, south of Waterloo would be the other project that we could probably deliver on. And we can still deliver on that. I guess, yeah, I made a call that section of Cork Street was probably the project to do. But I may or may not be right, and council gets to decide that today.
Okay, Brooke.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Staff have made a recommendation to bring this project forward because of a few reasons. One is the size of the project and the need of the project. And really, there are several other capital projects that we will be reviewing as part of the budget process. If they're smaller, the likelihood of us being able to get the contractors isn't as, I guess, challenging as some of these larger projects. So based on the need and the size of the project and just the timing to get that contract in place, that's why this particular project is coming forward at this time. It will also help us set the parameters for the remaining capital budgeting process if we know that this one's approved. So that'll kind of help us narrow down the range of projects that we'll be able to bring forward to council for decision. And if Farhad has anything to add, he's welcome to make any comments as well.
Farhad, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what Matt articulated is the pure reason is the timing of it. Matt was shared concern that if it gets a little bit late, there might not be availability of contractor to do the job, and it may be pushed further. So I think in my mind, the main concern with the speed and timing of it. Our budget, first draft of our budget will be presented at the end of this month on 27th. And based on the feedback we get, it could be as early as the first meeting of March or towards the last meeting of March. That's the time frame we are looking into. In terms of priority setting, definitely Matt and I worked on looking into a 10-year horizon. What are the other different projects? What are the other context we can look into? And that will be there, and that will be shared with the council to give a context how to select the appropriate project. This one is pretty much logistical reason we put it forward for council's consideration.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I just had one question I would ask to you, Matt. I assume we have a design complete already for this project?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. I think we're still about a month out, but we have a pretty firm design, but there's still some details that we're working through.
Okay, one of the reasons I ask it is that I've had some inquiries from residents in that neighborhood. And I'm not sure what the answer to this is, but we're raising concerns about which side of the street the sidewalk ought to be on. Whether it ought to be on the side of
It'll be on the east side, right?
yeah, and they were advocating for the west side, and because of the adjacent recreation lands, I just wasn't sure what the appropriate is, except we go on the west side, then they're having to cross the street to access sidewalks, which isn't ideal either. So I don't know whether you have any comment to add to that or not.
Yeah, nothing intelligent. I can raise it, but I would think it would be the east side, kinda.
Okay, thank you.
Why is everyone laughing in council chambers when I say that? So that's concerning to me.
Just enjoying your brutal honesty, Matt.
Yeah, but I think it's up the east side, so that's the way it should be. But yeah, we can ask that question and get an engineered opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, we'll go on to the report on township's drinking water systems. And we have a recommendation here that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive and approve report ops 2023-007, being a report on the township's 2022 drinking water systems annual and summary report. And further, the council directs staff to submit the approved report to the applicable agencies and make the report available to the public. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Hearn. Open the floor for questions or comments. Councillor McCabe, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Lennox, and through you, Corey, great report. Thank you for this. And just had a quick question. If you can kind of remind me, the highest use in Arthur and the average use in Arthur, and then the highest use in Mount Forest and the average is still well below our capacity in both wastewater treatment plants. Is that right?
Sorry, and through you, Mayor Lennox. I assume, Councillor McCabe, you're talking about the water supply, water capacity?
Yes, sorry, yes, Corey.
Yeah. Yeah, so in this report, all parameters, including the maximum allowable pumpage and the daily maximum pumpage were met. We were within all parameters. So yeah, we were still well below those limits.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. Thank you. Just wanted that little clarification. Thanks. Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I would just add my thanks to the water team for, I've lost track of how many years it is. We've had a very favorable report here. Thank you and congratulations to the team for continuing your work. Our residents appreciate it. Sometimes they may not recognize all the work that goes into it, but we certainly rely heavily on having safe drinking water in our communities, and thanks for continuously delivering that.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox, and I will be sure to pass it on to the team. I too echo that. A lot of hard work this past year, as in every other year, and without the hard work of the operators as well as our compliance analyst, wouldn't be achievable. So I have not lost track. It's 15 straight years with 100% that we've received 100% rating from the Ministry of the Environment. So something we're very proud of.
Good job, security, Corey.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to 6B. This is report regarding appointing a impound livestock facility. So there's a lengthy recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report CLK 2023-007, being a report on amending the agreement to appoint a facility to impound livestock under the Pounds Act and to set remuneration. And further, the agreement be amended as follows. Section 1 of the agreement read: the Township of Wellington North agrees to pay David Carson Farms and Auction Services Limited an annual retainer of $500 to be paid January 1st, a hold fee per day per animal of $20, transportation fee of $1.20 per kilometer, and $100 per hour for labor to load livestock. Be replaced with the Township of Wellington North agrees to pay David Carson Farms and Auction Services Limited an annual retainer of $1,000 and be paid January 1st, a hold fee per day per animal of $20, transportation fee of $1.50 per kilometer, and $100 per hour for labor to load livestock, and that the following clause be included in the agreement: that the agreement shall be terminated on December 31st, 2026, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the bylaw to amend the agreement. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Rankin. Any discussion on that one? Councillor Rankin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. I had a question, I think, more than a discussion. First, I was wondering whether this building is going to be, say, a barn on the bylaw person's property, or is it going to be another building that has been built specifically for that purpose? And secondly, I was wondering, I know that say stray dogs are kept at a facility like that, but when they're talking about larger animals, are these animals that have been confiscated due to their physical abilities?
So through you, your worship. So when this would become in effect is if we had to impound animals that were found to be straying at large, that weren't being contained on their own property. Any animals that are in distress or not in good condition, those are the responsibility of the provincial Animal Welfare Society through that act. So we're not authorized to go in and remove animals from someone's property, livestock from someone's property. This is when they're on the road or trespassing on neighbors' properties. And that's not now and again when your cow gets out in the middle of summer. These are for repeated violations of numerous livestock. And we're not proposing to construct a facility. David Carson Farms and Auction Services are located near Listowel, and it's a big facility, and they're set up to do this. So they would bring, once the animals are restrained, if they get loose and they're restrained on another property, meaning corralled, Carson's will bring their truck for a fee, load them and take them back to their facility and charge us that much per day and per mileage. The owner of the livestock, if they can be identified, have to pay all of the costs to get them back.
Oh, thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item C. This is in regard to the year in review. Recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information report CAO 2023-002, the 2022 year in review. And do you have a presentation you want to make before I open it up for questions? Sure. Okay, so take it away, Brooke.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, thanks so much. I have a few slides just to share with council today. So if I can pull them up. Right. So I am very happy to be able to share this information with council today. I am fairly new at the Township of Wellington North, just having started here in September. But one of the things I can say is that this township has been very, very busy the last few years. And so this document is really just an opportunity to share some of the information on some of the projects and initiatives that have been underway. And really to celebrate the work that council has done and that staff have done in supporting the community. So this document has several components. One is just sort of an introduction to the township, some information around council and staffing. And then also the document highlights some of the programs and services that are offered by the Township of Wellington North. And what we have done here is demonstrated some of the highlights based on the 7 program areas and many of the services that we deliver. This document is also an opportunity to share some of the progress related to the last strategic plan. So that would be of last council, and then talk about what's coming next. So I did want to just commend staff and council on some of the work that's happened. As I mentioned, it's been almost a year since the township's website was launched last year, and that was a whole resale or a wholesale redo of the website. And earlier today, some of the things like the volunteer celebration and newcomer events were noted, and so we've highlighted some of the work that's been done to celebrate all of that activity and the partnerships that are created. There was lots of work done in the recreation front last year in terms of some of the playgrounds that were made accessible or rehabilitated. Examples are the Campbell DeVore Playground, the Roy Grant Playground, and thanks to a generous community donation, the update to the Donald Ball Diamond, which is now a red clay diamond. So I won't go over everything in the document because there's quite a bit, but essentially we do want to say thank you to staff and to the community for all of the different events and initiatives that have gone on over the last year. I mentioned the strategic plan, and because of the timing of this document, we wanted to highlight some of the work that's been done over the last 4 years in the last strategic plan. And so there were 4 priority areas: modernization and efficiency, partnerships, municipal infrastructure, and alignment and integration. And so you can see some of the work that's been done despite the pandemic, which I'm sure was an extra challenge added on top of all of this. But I think it's really to their credit of council and staff that they remained on task in terms of implementing some of the projects that were identified under these priority areas. And so I would be remiss not to mention what's coming next. This is something that I'm really excited about, which is going to be the updating of the next Township of Wellington North strategic plan. We're looking to launch this initiative later this month. We've already established our project team, which involves staff from across the organization and the steering committee, and we're just finalizing the work plan now. And we will be launching our first ever community satisfaction survey. So that is a statistically significant phone survey that will be done across the township by Deloitte consultants. So if anyone in the community gets a call, it's legitimate. We are looking to hear what you think of our different services and what you think are some of the priorities for the township moving forward. There will be a parallel online survey for everyone who doesn't get a chance to answer the questions from the phone survey. So we'll be letting people know how they can get involved and give us their feedback. And all of this information will be really important in terms of shaping our future consultation process, our internal continuous improvement efforts, and things like the budget deliberations and how we basically allocate our resources. So it's a really important starting point for the community. And that does complete just the presentation that I had, but this information will be available on our website if council receives this report. It's still in draft form, but our hope is that we will be finalizing that and distributing it to the community so that they have an understanding of the work that's underway and the opportunities for future consultation. Thank you.
You haven't yet.
Yeah,
Sure.
And with that, I'll open the floor for discussion.
Yeah, and through you, Mayor. Yeah, that is on, sorry. I think this is well overdue as well. I mean, there's a lot of people in the community that often ask what we do with all the money that is budgeted out. A lot of it gets put underground. Most important stuff probably gets put underground so that we can continue to build our community. So having a document like this that we can update, whether it's every year or every second year or every 5 years, I think is great. And I think this is the first one that I've kind of seen like this that's actually in print for Wellington North. So nice job.
Thanks. Councillor Burke, did you have your hand up?
I did. Just a reminder for those of us that are at home, when you folks are speaking at the council chambers, please turn on your mic. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm having a hard time hearing when you don't turn your mic on. But anyways, going back to Brooke's presentation, I love it. I think it's a great communication piece. My question is, I'm going to address it to Dale. I think if Dale is still on the line. And that is whether whether we do our own printing and distribution, or whether there's a way to partner with the Chamber of Commerce and their sort of community guide. I know in the past we've donated $5,000 to help launch that project, and wonder if that's a possibility as opposed to doing a standalone project. And I'll let both Brooke and Dale maybe respond to that.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Certainly, there's always opportunities for partnership. And as we roll this type of communication out, we can look at that. I think this time around, we have actually partnered with the Wellington Advertiser, who was very kind enough to design the document for us and will be working with us to distribute the document if approved. But yes, I think the answer to that is Dale and I can have future conversations around what partnerships might look like and how we get this information out in a variety of formats and through a variety of, I guess, channels.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Rankin?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a comment, and I'd like to congratulate Brooke on the report. I think it's eye-catching, and it covers a lot of items on it and with enough detail just to make people interested. So very well done.
Any other questions or comments? I would just add, it's been said before, I think this is a great communication tool, and it's first that we've ever done of this type of thing. And I think it is a great way to communicate with our residents about the events of the day or the time. And certainly, I think we're entering a time in our community with a lot of change potentially. And we definitely need to keep the lines of communication open as we work together to address that change. So I hope, it's one of the first steps, and again, re-engaging with the public to help us determine what the future priorities may be. I know that we'd started before the end of the last term of council to review our community growth plan. I think that's going to feature be a big feature in what we're going to deal with in the coming days, but we will go through the strategic planning process, and we're going to get some public input to help us with that, so that we can do an even better job of planning for our collective future. So again, thanks for that. I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 7A. This is regarding the zoning bylaw amendment for Jmar Meats in West Gray. And we have a recommendation here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North received the Corporation of the Municipality of West Gray notice of application and public meeting dated January 19th, 2023 for proposed zoning bylaw amendment for Jmar Meats at 311050 Highway 6. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that one, please? Moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor Burke. And with that, let's have some discussion. Councillor Rankin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for clarification. If the facility is not going to become an abattoir, what will the meat processing be?
Okay, we'll get Curtis Marshall to the podium here to help us with that. But better check the microphone there, Curtis. Councillor Burke caught me out with not turning my mic on, so.
Through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Rankin. So we have been we've received a copy of the zoning bylaw amendment application, and it doesn't provide exactly that detail what type of meat processing is being undertaken, but it does clarify that there will be a retail store as well. And in the proposed draft bylaw clearly indicates it's not an abattoir.
So, I mean, I'm not the expert on this, Councillor Rankin, but I would think it would be very similar to the further processing they're currently doing at their current location. They're just wanting to move to that much closer to Wellington North to make their business that much better.
Thank you.
Okay, call the motion then on that one. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7D. This is in regard to the correspondence from Warren Fink. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the correspondence from Warren Fink at 363 Jeremy's Crescent regarding the request to rezone 425 and 427 King Street, Mount Forest from R2 to R3. Could I get a mover and a seconder to receive that correspondence? Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Rankin. Any discussion on that one? Councillor Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lennox. I pulled this because I felt that it was relevant to the conversation to 2A and the bylaw that is coming later in the agenda. That the sentiment that is felt by the neighbors out at 425 and 427 is not just a neighborhood concern. It's a concern throughout the community. So that was the reason for pulling it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that one? Councillor Rankin, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I fully agree with Councillor Burke on this letter of submission. And I believe one word that sort of stands out for me is the word integrity of the location of the 18 unit cluster. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you both. I would agree that this is a concern that is being voiced in the community fairly widely. I mean, someone made the comment earlier today about that they thought that there was a level of futility around raising their concerns. I think that this needs to be part of a larger community conversation. The community growth plan that we put together in 2017 involved some community member participation, and that identified that we needed to intensify our housing types and get more dense housing in our communities within the built boundaries. This is, this and other similar projects in other parts of town have also received the same level of objection. And I think if this is not what the community wants as a group, then we either need to figure out what the community does want. Do they not want to grow, or do we want to grow in some different way? Because honestly, I don't know how we grow with the numbers that we're expected to grow with, meet the community needs, and not do in greater intensification with higher density. So I look forward to those type of discussions, because if we're really not going to embrace change in our neighborhoods, then we have to find another solution. And I don't see an easy one on the horizon. So I know I've heard on other occasions with other applications, well, not here, not in this neighborhood. Well, I think that we need to answer the question, then where? And if we can't answer that question, I don't know how we address this issue. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That comes to the end of our items for consideration. Do we have any notice of motion this afternoon? Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah. So I have a notice of motion here that I think will align with some of the conversations that we've had. And that would be that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North directs staff to undertake a cost benefit analysis on the current planning services provided to the township by the County of Wellington, compared to having these services provided in-house.
Okay, thank you. So we will address that at our next meeting later in February. And Councillor Burke, I assume you'll work with staff to get that wording included in the agenda.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other notice of motion this afternoon? Okay, we'll move on to community group meeting program report. Does anybody have anything they'd like to report on in that area today? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. And through you, we had, excuse me, last week had a really good discussion with the Mount Forest doctor recruitment committee. We're actually in pretty decent shape right now with residents and with doctors and with residents that actually want to come back. There is a doctor and his wife who's actually a lab technician, and she's from Norway and finds Mount Forest and Wellington North very similar to her hometown in Norway, which she really misses but loves up here as well. So we're doing all right that way. I think Dale and I have already kind of had a chat, and I actually quite support their ask for this next budget year of 15 grand, up from our usual 10 grand that I want to submit to the budget. Costs have gone up as everything else has, and one of the things that you might have seen lately is the Minto and Mapleton healthcare Lynn video that was extremely well done. They want to do one for Wellington North that is specific just to Wellington North. So there's a lot of production that goes into that, and have put them in contact with a couple of real estate developers that are in Arthur that did a great job promoting Arthur when they were opening up some of their developments. So they're on to that, but all that costs money. So that's why I'm really looking for some support for the 15 grand for the doctor recruitment. There is a rec Parks and Leisure meeting tomorrow. It's virtual. It's at 4 p.m. And then there is the community garden meeting in Mount Forest as well. And I know there's I think it's at 7, and I think it's the same time as your meeting, Councillor Burke.
Yes.
Okay. And then I have a SVCA meeting coming up later on this month, and then my first Roma meeting on the 17th of February as well.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Anyone else have anything they'd like to report on in this area? Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're having our first aquatics meeting in some time tomorrow evening. And as Councillor McCabe alluded to, the community garden meeting is also tomorrow night. But I did contact Elsa Mann to let her know that I wouldn't be attending, and she was going to make sure that we get the info, like keep us sort of in the email loop so that we do know what is going on with that group.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned I'll be going to that one as well, Councillor Burke. Sorry.
Oh, are you going? Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
because I
perfect.
figured there'd be lots at the aquatics meeting, so I thought I would go to the community garden one. Sorry, I meant to say that.
Okay, perfect. I didn't catch that, Steve. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, anybody have anything else they'd like to report on tonight, this afternoon? It's not night yet.
Getting close.
Okay, not seeing anything else, and I think we're all getting a little tired, so we'll just carry on for today, and we'll move to bylaws. So we have two bylaws to pull out separately, so we'll deal with everything else but those two, and then we'll come back to those two. So that's 06-23 and 11-23. So we have a recommendation here that bylaw number 004, 005, 007, 008, 009 -23 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Hearn, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Any discussion on those bylaws? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll go back and deal with 006-23. This is in regard to the King Street rezoning application. And recommendation would be that bylaw number 006-23 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Hearn. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And the last one is 11-23. So the recommendation will read that bylaw number 11-23 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor McCabe. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to our cultural moment. And I was going to press Councillor Rankin to do this one again today, but because of the traffic snarl, wasn't able to get here. So I'll go ahead and do it myself, Penny.
Okay, thank you.
Cultural moment for February 6th celebrates the Raw Carrot Soup Enterprise. The Raw Carrot is a social enterprise that began in Paris, Ontario in 2014 as an initiative of the Paris Presbyterian Church. The church wanted to support those individuals in their congregations struggling to meet basic needs. These individuals relied on the church for financial and social support. However, they found it difficult to find employment to change their circumstances. The Raw Carrot became a social franchise when it opened its second location in Mount Forest in 2017 in the United Church and has 4 locations in Ontario. Social enterprises have a double bottom line of both purpose and profit to ensure their sustainability as organizations. The Raw Carrot hires individuals on the Ontario Disability Support Program to cook and package handcrafted gourmet soup. The soup is sold in retailers and farmers markets in the local community, and soup can also be ordered online at therawcarrot.com/order-online. The individuals hired are provided with a supportive work environment and on-the-job training. They gain valuable skills while earning additional income to help meet some basic needs. The Raw Carrot Soup Enterprise has an advisory board that helps strengthen, support, encourage, challenge, hold accountable, and help govern its growth. They partner with churches who donate the use of their commercial kitchens, with local employment agencies who offer job coaching and job subsidy for new staff, with local community groups who support them through soup sales, with service clubs that provide small grants, and with small business centers that provide advice and support in running the social franchise. Locally, the Township of Wellington North has been very supportive of the Raw Carrot, as has Kindred Credit Union. Some local retailers in Wellington North that sell this delicious soup are Foodland in Arthur and Mount Forest and Meat the Butcher in Mount Forest. You can also find a booth at the Mount Forest Farmers Market at various vendors and craft markets throughout the year. This was submitted by Sue Doherty on behalf of the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable. And I would give a shout out to the mulligatawny soup. I particularly like it. I've never heard of mulligatawny soup before, so it was an education, but an enjoyable one.
I know to move into closed session, I'm just wondering, with what's on the closed session, I think we should pass the resolution now to extend past our 4-hour curfew.
Okay.
Because if we have to do it in closed session, we're going to come out in open session, do it and go back.
Okay, so why don't we do that? You got a wording for that?
Kathy, can you just read it out? Oh, you'll need to use the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, the wording to extend the curfew is that the February 6th, 2023 regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North be extended past the 4 hours curfew as set out in section 23.1 of bylaw number 111-21, being the procedure bylaw for governing the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings of council and its committees.
Okay, at the risk of being glib, what she said. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved
Yep.
by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Burke. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
So to the attendees on the meeting, I'm going to remove you because we're going to have to lock the meeting and stop the recording. Thank you for joining us. That was a long meeting. And your bylaw passed.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you.
Thank
See you later,
you.
Kurt.
See you later. Yep.